Alright, here we are another night where there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no one to look up to. All the great podcast themes have been turned into podcast theme parks, and I don't know about you, but...
Hello, baby, I've been waiting for a Christian Slater podcast.
Okay, welcome back to the Christian Slater Monitor, and welcome to the show, the King of Slates, Slate Brother number 1, the Godfather of Slate, the slatest slating man in Slate business, my cousin.
Hey, this is Winkle Ramirez coming at you with Oz.
Nice to see you, sir. First of all, if you look great, and every passing year it becomes clear to me that you and your sister may be the most gorgeous people ever to live on Earth. How did this happen?
I don't know. I'm still trying to decide how I feel about being connected to her. So, we did get some good genes.
You really did.
We're lucky.
We're going to talk today about 1990's Young Guns 2, which is a movie that's near and dear to you and I's hearts.
Yes.
But first, I want to just talk to you about Christian Slater in general. What is your first memory of Christian Slater? What's the first Christian Slater movie you saw?
I was aware of Gleaming the Cube, but I don't remember when I watched that the first time. But I remember Mobsters because we dressed up like that for Halloween, and I actually was dressed up as him for Halloween in the 11th grade. And we went to the mall. Me and my buddy Rocky. I'll just go with the first name. I'm not sure if he wants to be outed. But we dressed as Mobsters, and we went to the mall, and we didn't know that Christian Slater was in town for like the movie premiere, I guess.
And this is Sooner Mall in Norman.
Oh, yeah, Sooner Mall in Norman. So it's a small, like, college town type mall.
Yeah, it's the town where Oakland University.
One level, like 4 little offshoot hallways off one big main hallway kind of thing. So we're in one of the offshoot hallways that's like the eating court kind of, when all these girls come screaming around the corner, and me and Rocky are like, what's going on? And they swarm us. We had bras being thrown at us. It was craziness. So mall security is not far behind them because these girls were screaming through the mall, running. And so they escort us out, and we find out that, like, that's when we find out Christian Slater's in town. And these girls thought that I was Christian Slater.
That's awesome.
I had no idea. Like, that's the only time maybe I've ever been compared to him. I mean, I got some other like James Dean, Luke Perry kind of people growing up, but, not Christian Slater. So I don't know.
Well, in addition to being handsome, you're always a fashion plate. So you kind of had like the sideburns first. You were the first person later that maybe for a while that I saw wearing Jinkos, and you could only get them at one store. Where did you get your fashion ideas in the 80s and 90s?
Well,
did other people at your school?
I got a 15-year-old son that I'm passing some of those ideas on to, so I think I got to keep those close to the chest.
Okay.
I would stay ahead of the curve. I'm passing those on right now to the next generation.
You were always ahead of the curve, and I would always just try to emulate you and do a poor job.
I'll give you one. For hair, what I did for hair was I would see what movie trailers were coming out in about a year or two, and I would go, like, if Brad Pitt for Fight Club, I'd be like, oh, that's what Brad's hair is going to look like in Fight Club in 2 years. So I would start growing my hair out to have that bedhead look before the bedhead look hit. So that was my trick for hair.
But you even in the Gleaming the Cube days, you were big into skating. And that's how I think you saw Gleaming the Cube before this movie, because I remember seeing maybe part of it at your house. We saw lots of movies together back in this era and further, but this was one of the main ones. Tell about how you came across watching this movie, Young Guns 2.
Well, I grew up in a small denomination Christian church called the Nazarene Church. It's kind of an offshoot of the Methodists, which is, more familiar to most people. But when I was growing up, you still couldn't do a lot of stuff like go to movies because it's a holiness church. And so, they try to control you by your actions and what you do.
Well, they also, they're anti-gambling, like, right? Like, I know your parents, like, they wouldn't go to Vegas or anything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, that's correct. They would be against gambling, horse racing, all that kind of stuff. Growing up, it's different now, but growing up, like at camp, you weren't allowed to like swim with the opposite sex.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't go to dances. I went to my prom, but that was my first like school dance I went to. I mean, I of course was going to a lot of house party dances and stuff, but that's a different story. So, I mean, my dad was a youth pastor and pastor, so I definitely was doing the pastor kids stuff. So, yeah.
So this movie came out in 1990, and
how I saw this movie.
Yeah.
I forgot where I was going with that for a second. So our denomination, it was like our church denomination, it was the movie thing was up for a vote. Every 4 years, our church gathers from across the world and like decides on rules and stuff in the manual that they may or may not want to change or keep. And the movie thing had become a big issue because people have VCRs and stuff at home. And like you were saying earlier, could watch whatever almost on TV with cable now. Mm-hmm. So it become kind of ridiculous to have a movie to be, against going to the movies.
Okay.
Because everybody's just watching them at their house. So it came up to vote and it passed and we could go to movies. Well, my parents were like, we know you're going to be going to movies. So we just want y'all to have, discernment in what you go see and pick good stuff. Well, one of the first things I was able to go see was Young Guns 2. So I remember Young Guns 2 being maybe like one of the first movies I saw in the theater. I got in trouble in the 5th grade for going to break into Electric Boogaloo. So I remember that.
You're also an excellent dancer.
Oh, yes, thank you. I spent a lot of time watching people like Vanilla Ice and Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson, Rhythm Nation, VHS tape, like wore that thing out practicing those moves. A lot of people think I dance like Michael Jackson, but I got to give Janet her credit. Got a lot from her.
I was just thinking about how great Janet Jackson was the other day because I just walked past some people in Hollywood, like some pedestrians, and they were young people, and one of them was like, was Janet Jackson even big on her own without Michael Jackson? And I just wanted to turn around and slap them. And be like, Janet Jackson was massive. She's still huge. Like she had so many hits and good songs. Yes.
Yeah. So that was the first movie I saw probably in the theaters after rules changed and I was allowed to go see movies. And I was 15 years old. And I remember that scene where the lady comes walking out of the bordello and nothing but her skimpies and is like, White Oaks, you can kiss my, and I was like mind blown. Like I was just sitting there looking at the biggest booty, totally naked on screen. And like, I had not really gotten to go to movies before. I hadn't seen like, TV, like all that stuff's cut out. And so I was just sitting there like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to be in trouble for having watched this or not. But so, yeah.
This would lead to us watching this on tape. You must have bought it. You bought it on tape, I think, or maybe you had it taped off TV.
I probably owned it. I'm pretty sure I saw Young Guns 2 even before I saw Young Guns 1.
I think so,
it's probably one of my favorite movies, especially favorite Westerns till Tombstone came out, for sure.
Oh, yeah. And I remember what we would watch is that and Posse. And I remember you had seen the trailer for Tombstone and told us about it at like Thanksgiving or something. You were like, there's this movie coming out, Tombstone, and it's going to be awesome. And sure enough, it was awesome. It was better than this movie. You're right.
Yeah, both of them wore them out, man. So, and for Tombstone, I actually was in college, so there was a dollar theater near there, and I probably saw that 30 times in the dollar theater.
Wow.
So,
yeah. Like, I saw it at least 3 times at the theater. The first time with our grandfather, and it really would have been tough. When you were a kid, did you watch any Westerns really before Young Guns 2?
Oh, it just was on TV and stuff, yeah.
Okay, because I remember, or I don't really remember this, but looking back at the 80s, there really weren't that many Westerns. Like, we kind of come from a generation, you were born when they still made Westerns, but in the 80s, there are only a handful of Westerns they even made. Like, they made many more after Young Guns 1. I think the movie Pale Rider was a big hit in 1985, and that started like a couple of years after that. Like, I think 3 years after that, you would have had Young Guns 1, and then Young Guns 2 comes out the same year as Dances with Wolves, which hit massive.
Right.
But both the Young Guns movies, I didn't realize this, they made a lot of money. They didn't cost much, and they were big hits.
Right.
Which kind of...
But Young Guns 2 was for sure, like, huge. And it probably got more money, I would guess. It looks like it had more money to make, probably because of the success of 1. I think that they didn't expect that.
Like slightly less. They cost about the same.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
I
figure with like the John Bon Jovi soundtrack and everything, it was like they probably had to pay for that.
The Oscar nominated John Bon Jovi for this movie.
Oh, really? I didn't know. I mean, Blaze of Glory has always been a favorite.
This that song got nominated for the Oscar for Best Song. I just realized that when I pulled up the IMDb right now.
Cool.
Do you want to get into talking about the movie?
Sure.
Begin spoilers.
Oh, no, wait. First, let's talk a little bit about the plot of Young Guns 1.
Okay.
What do you think of Young Guns 1?
I feel like Young Guns 1 and Young Guns 2 are kind of like one is a little bit like a more of an old school Western feel.
I would agree.
And 2 has more like, it's like kind of like your first kind of modern Western almost, maybe. You know, it may not be the first, but it's probably the most defining one for like the new era of Western type movies, probably. With the big soundtracks and the sweeping landscapes and
just
a little more of a
kinetic
story.
Camera moves, faster cutting. Yeah, just more camera moves. It feels like they wanted to go for that in the first one, and that maybe the director of the first one, Christopher Kane, he didn't seem that comfortable with it or something. It's like they have that beginning part where it like swoops in on the different guys in kind of an MTV kind of way, and then it kind of abandons that for the rest of the movie and just kind of is kind of an old school Western. I mean, there's the part where they do drugs, where they do the peyote, then go to the spirit world. I don't know. I like Young Guns 1 pretty well. It's entertaining, but I don't like it quite as much. I was watching it before this. I never realized what a bad leader Charlie Sheen was.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I mean, who walks out in front of the outhouse and gets taken out? That's just, I mean, he had to be sitting there when they were like, all right, what you're going to do is you're going to get up and go out in front of this outhouse. You had to just be sitting there being like, that's stupid. This guy survived this long. He's not the type of dude to walk in front of an outhouse. Like, you don't know a lot about him, but you got to assume he seems like educated, and like he's obviously the leader. So he's got to be smart enough to beat the rest of them in chess, which means he's got to be able to see the, dude sticking his gun out coming.
Yes.
Like, that's the outcome of this move.
And he tells them to cover him. And if they'd actually provided cover, they would have accidentally shot him, probably.
Right.
Because they're behind him. It's really bad. And he's always,
And why does he go out there at all? Why didn't they just like fill bullets like they do in the end and leave?
No, you're right. And Charlie Sheen, I think, is a pretty good actor. We went and saw the movie Terminal Velocity with him at one point. He's not good in the movie either. So it's probably a career worst performance for Charlie Sheen.
I mean, I really only remember any of his characters from 2.5 Men.
So really,
if you told me movies he's in, don't know if I would remember his characters. Like, I don't know that he ever really has stood out that much to me in a movie.
Wow.
Like, he's in that baseball movie. I can only picture him.
Yeah, Vaughn.
That's the only other movie I could think of off the top of my head that I even see his face in.
So one thing in the first Young Guns is in the end when they have their big shootout at the house of the people that gets burned down, which I guess really happened, is that Charlie Beaudry, that's played by Casey Size-Macco, who's the guy who says the line, regulators mount up, that's in the classic song by Warren G. He really wasn't killed there. He would have been killed the way we end up seeing Doc Scurlock get killed in Young Guns 2. So they could have actually brought him back if they hadn't killed him off.
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe that's why they picked to kill Doc that way, is if they knew that was a historical way one of them actually did die.
Because also Doc Scurlock and I don't think Chavez were even with them then. They after the events of the first one kind of went their own way. I think Chavez was a witness like Billy the Kid in the thing about the burning the house, and then he eventually went straight, and really Chavez lived until the 20th century. He lived to be like 70 something years old.
Oh, wow.
Doc Scurlock's buried in Texas, so he survived too. And they really weren't even young guns except for Billy. Doc Scurlock was the oldest regulator. He was 31, and John Tunstall, who gets murdered in Young Guns 1, that sets them off on their revenge tour, he was younger than most of them. He was like 26 or something when they got killed.
Oh, wow. Well, I was thinking about this when I was rewatching them for this, talking with you about them, was I don't know how much time passes between Young Guns 1 and 2 in the real world, but you feel like it's, within a year, around a year probably. Mm-hmm. So shouldn't Billy the Kid only be like 17 or 18 in Young Guns 2?
That's a good question. You're probably
But
right.
he feels like he's in his mid to late 20s by that time.
Yeah. Also in Young Guns 1, they keep telling Billy in the beginning, like the scenes before, that he's like, something's wrong with him, that he's crazy, but he doesn't do anything crazy until later when he kills that guy. It's like he's really just doing regular stuff, and they're like, oh, you're crazy.
Right. He just kind of exaggerates, pushes stuff a little further.
Yeah.
With like in Young Guns 1, like when the guys have to apologize to him and they're like, we're just yakking on you or something like that. We're just hacking. We're just hacking on you. And like then that Billy says, I killed someone, and they're like, what did you kill him for? And he's like, he was hacking on me. It's like, I think that's the kind of stuff that makes them think, oh, this guy's like a little bit more off than even we are.
That's one thing about both movies, is the first one as well has some good lines, like memorable lines of dialogue, like the reap the whirlwind and Sheriff Brady.
Yeah.
Clearly the regulators mount up. They were hacking on me. The spirit world.
You see the size of that chicken? I mean, you yell that nowadays, and like dudes my age will still holler back at you. Like if you're in a crowd and you're like, you see the size of that chicken? And then some dude will be like, you see the size of that cock-a-doodle-doo? So you're like, yep.
Well, in Young Guns 2, we start with Morgan Creek Productions, which was named after the Miracle of Morgan's Creek, which is an old movie, which is pretty good. It's an old comedy. And Young Guns 1 was the first Morgan Creek production movie, and they made many a movie, including Last of the Mohicans, Stay Tuned, Free Jack, directed by the director of this, and Jeff Murphy, and starring Emilio. And they had some big hits, and then I think as time went on, they had some really bad misses too. They're still around technically, but their last movie to date that came out theaters was the Tupac All Eyes on Me movie. They did 4 Christian Slater movies. They did this one. They did True Romance. They did 3,000 Miles to Graceland. And one more, I can't remember. I think they might have done the Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which was massive.
Yeah.
That's the biggest hit Slater had to date.
I looked up the director when I was looking at stuff, and I don't remember, what did you say he did that was like big after this?
He didn't do that many big movies. He directed the movie Free Jack, seen an HBO Western called The Last Outlaw with Mickey Rourke. But then both he and the guy, Christopher Kane, who directed Young Guns 1, both directed episodes of a Magnificent Seven TV show that you can watch all of on YouTube, and I did. It's not bad.
Okay.
It's kind of silly.
Yeah, because I didn't recognize any names of the movies really, and so that's why I wondered like what you would say was like his big hits after Young Guns 2.
I would say Young Guns 2 was his big hit.
That's what I thought, but I defer to the Hollywood expert.
Yeah. So in Young Guns 2, we open up with Brushy Bill Roberts riding a burro alone in what looks like White Sands, New Mexico, and it's gorgeous. And we get some fun score with Spanish guitar and some Neo Morricone style male singers. Alan Silvestri did the music. Dean Simler shot the movie. The opening credits, we find out that John Fusco, the writer, is back. Did you see he's also going to be the writer of Young Guns 3?
No, but I saw that he had like a lot more success than the director.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job on these, right?
Oh yeah. I don't know what they'll do with Young Guns 3, but I feel a little leery about it. But kind of similar to Top Gun 2.
Oh,
feel a little leery about that one too.
Me too.
So.
I don't know. I don't trust Top Gun 2 at all. I don't trust it. I don't trust it.
I mean, when you initially hear it, you're like, yeah, rock and roll more. But then after a while, you're kind of like, well, this is probably a bad idea. So
one thing I did see here though is that Tom Cruise learned to fly a fighter jet so that they could like put cameras all around on it as much as possible and have it be as real as possible. So
that's just unnecessary. I feel like most of Tom Cruise's antics is probably unnecessary.
Yeah.
So what is he, like 70? He doesn't need to be flying a F-15 or 16 or whatever. Like that's $100 million going in the ground and him shooting out and then a parachute.
Okay, so then we see Brushy Bill, and he's in it's Emilio in old age makeup, and it seems like it's the Old West, but then a 1950s car. I didn't look up what kind of car.
Well, no, I don't know. Like I remember sitting in the theater, and it was shocking when that semi went flying by. Sitting there like, okay, I'm here to see a Western. This is Billy the Kid Part 2. And like you see the old man coming up, and then all of a sudden that semi goes by, and like, the sound, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like that's the first time I think I was aware of how close the Old West was to like the time period I was living in. That this guy was potentially still alive when a semi truck was, driving down a highway.
Especially the events, because the Old West could be any time in the 19th century, even maybe to past the early 20th century. And the events of the Billy the Kid story aren't that early in the 19th century. Yeah, it does seem crazy that Billy the Kid could have been alive. But you didn't know. So I guess trailers didn't show you that he was going to be Brushy Bill Bill Roberts, or at least you didn't know. So you weren't aware yet that it was even Emilio.
Was that in the trailers? I don't remember the trailers.
I don't remember either.
So, I don't know that was given away in the trailers. I don't remember the trailer, but I definitely got this vibe that dude was Billy the Kid when he was walking up and stuff. It still wasn't in my brain that like that meant he was in modern time. There were cars and planes and everything at this point. You still just didn't like that, just didn't register yet until that semi went flying by, and then it's like, oh wow, this is fairly recent. Like more so than what I think. But also when I watched Dazed and Confused, like, and the dude says, yeah, you look like a greaser in that movie. Like to me, that was like way long time ago. Like she looks like a greaser, but now, like, I mean, that's 2005 compared to now for like right. That movie. And so like, I just feel like everything from before I was born seems like it was like, 500 years ago.
Timey.
Yeah.
So then apparently he meets a lawyer on the roadside in the middle of nowhere, as one does. He must be hiding with no fixed address. I guess he has the warrant out on him. And then the guy playing the lawyer, Bradley Whitford, he's big now. And he finds out that this is Brushy Bill Roberts and he's dying, and he wants to be pardoned by the governor of New Mexico for the killing of 21 men. He was promised a pardon almost 72 years previous. And he gives his aliases or whatever. One is William Atrium. The other is William H. Bonney. And I guess they, like, the Young Guns movies messed with history a lot, but they did include, like, some things that were correct, like that his real name wasn't William H. Bonney. That was just another alias. And that also, like, there was even the Paul Newman movie, The Left-Handed Gun, and the first Young Guns points out that Billy the Kid really wasn't even left-handed. That was just from a photograph, that's a reverse. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like at some point he reads it in the first one. He's like, left-handed? I'm not left-handed. I mean, he really wasn't. I missed that. So Whitford, he tells him that, no, you're not Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid was killed by Pat Garrett. Everybody knows that. And then Roberts threatens to kill him if he doesn't hightail it out of his sight. But that convinces his love of his quickness to threaten him with murder makes Whitford...
They gotta make it 22 just for the fun of it.
Makes him believe that it might be Billy the Kid. So he asks for evidence, asks him if he has any scars. And then the thought of scars gives Brushy Bill Roberts pause. And this is where we go into the flashback with that cool music. And you think, see, I thought it was going to be the Billy the Kid and his gang riding, but it's a bunch of like raw dog, scavenger, Wild Bunch style bounty hunters. And they roll up in New Mexico territory up on like Billy the Kid asleep. And then he's playing possum, and he wakes up and kills one of them. And then Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh and Pat Garrett emerge from cover to kill the other guys out of like from behind bushes and rocks. And Pat Garrett is William L. Peterson from such shows as CSI and movies like Manhunter. And Arkansas Dave is Christian Slater. This is our first meeting of him. And did you look up anything about the real Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh?
I did a little bit, but that was like way back when we initially talked about doing this. And like, so I should have refreshed because I now I'm kind of like, I just remember some hazy pictures. I don't know that he actually went to Mexico or that he died in Mexico. I'm not sure about that. I remember something in there made me think that was maybe not true.
There are a lot of different accountings of Arkansas Dave, but it's all kind of hazy. Apparently, what we kind of know is that the first time Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp ever met, it was to discuss trying to catch Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh.
Oh, okay.
In like when Wyatt Earp was not maybe a U.S. Marshal yet, maybe he was, but it was back when like in Dodge City days, after he'd been a sheriff in Dodge City, he was like on the road and trying to track down different people with warrants, and he had a warrant for Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh. You see this in the movie Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner. They show how he and Doc Holliday first met, and they're like, he's looking for Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh, and a bartender tells him like, well, I don't know where Arkansas Dave is, but I know a guy who knows him, and it's Doc Holliday. And I guess Doc Holliday and Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh used to hang some, and Doc Holliday hated Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh, and immediately...
I was going to say that their personalities seemed like they would clash.
They did.
Like, they seemed like they would clash. I could see them, because they both are pretty arrogant and cocky, and I could just see them like not getting along.
Yeah, he gave him up, and he gave him what he knew, but I guess Wyatt Earp never caught Arkansas Dave. Eventually, Bat Masterson caught Arkansas Dave, and then eventually set him free to help him in something called the Santa Fe Railroad Wars or the Pacific Railroad Wars that never happened, to like help defend a railroad against another company or something. And then that never went down. And somehow Arkansas Dave, he makes his way out to New Mexico, and he apparently was a big time like killer. And they say that he's the only man that Billy the Kid feared.
Oh, wow.
Because Arkansas Dave would have been older and very.
You do not get that in the movie. You know? You do not get that there's any sense of like fear between the two of them. Like they do seem to have a mutual respect that both of them are willing to like immediately set aside, you know, for ragging on each other and going at each, like they're constantly trying to push each other's buttons, I feel like.
Yeah, especially Arkansas Dave, like he's always, I don't think we have it yet where he starts the running gag of trying to take over the gang or say it's his gang. But you can kind of see maybe the real guy would have done some of that.
One of the things I was just thinking about as I was rewatching these was if there was anybody I'd want to see, like I wouldn't mind if Young Guns 3 was the Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh story.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Like he needs his own movie. Like especially now that you're telling me like how he was with Doc Holliday and stuff even. That's what I was thinking when I was watching this was like Arkansas Dave, if there's anybody in this that you could make a movie off just that person and like what their life was about, it would probably be him.
Reading it up, like it seems like you could make a Chavez movie too. I read the Wikipedia of Chavez and he had a lot of adventures, though he eventually like he went straight, but he had adventures like as kind of a good guy eventually.
Okay.
Some people think
I thought he died, so like that's why I didn't say him.
Me neither. But, I looked it up just to see what really happened with these different people, because I also questioned who some of these people even are as we meet them throughout the film. But yeah, I guess Chavez, he lived a long life. Like he lived to like 1920 almost or something.
Wow.
Maybe even beyond. I can't remember. But anyway, this has their one really cold-blooded thing is when Pat Garrett goes up to that last bounty hunter. You remember this? And he's like, "Do I know you?" And the guy's like, yeah, you know me.
Yeah.
And then Pat Garrett asks him his name and where he's from, and the guy tells him. Then he's like, no, and then shoots him. Yeah,
that whole scene, I think, when you're sitting in the theater watching it for the first time, that whole scene, you kind of relax and are like, okay, this is going to be as funny and as good as the first one.
Yeah.
Like that you get it in that scene that like whatever made the first one magical as far as like the jokes and one-liners and the way the guys interacted with each other, it's going to be in this one too. I mean, like you kind of just relax and are able to like, I think, move forward enjoying the movie from there.
Christian Slater, he questions Emilio. So we do have some question here of why not just hide out in the canyons? Why did he just play possum there? Billy, I guess he refuses to be pushed out of New Mexico, and he's becoming a big name. Then we get this montage of newspaper headlines with the gunshot, and Emilio Estevez is laughing, which he does a lot in this movie. With the hee or whatever. Don't really do a good Emilio laugh. It's
right.
Kind of his big thing in this movie as he just constantly like cackles. Emilio Estevez played a lot of like psycho and off-balance guys in movies before Young Guns 1. I think maybe that added to their ability to just be like, he's crazy, because he played a lot of crazy guys before this. Then now we cut to that school where Doc Scurlock is teaching school in New Mexico where he's wanted. I don't know why.
Oh, I thought he was teaching school in New York.
I don't think so. I think he's
he says it. They found me back east.
Oh, okay. Maybe they did. Why would they have a warrant for murders in New Mexico all the way in New York and be rounding people up and bring them all the way back to New Mexico?
So they can make a movie?
I guess so.
I mean, why else? Like, you know, I don't know. Man. I thought that was weird rewatching. Like, it's so weird what sticks out to you as an adult watching a movie compared to when you're younger, you know? I mean, I've watched this movie a lot of times. This is probably the first time in like 5-6 years probably, you know, especially since I've had children and they've gotten older. Like, so much different stuff stuck out, and one of it was like, why would the police or the sheriffs or whoever be all the way up in New York?
Yeah, that made no sense to me. Like, as I didn't even get that he was in New York, but now when I think about it, it does look more New Yorky, which he's teaching like a wide range of children, and he's teaching them the alphabet, and he gets from like F to W really fast, and he's teaching them like a wide range of vocabulary, like it's like watch and fulminate.
Right.
It's like snowy when he gets arrested. Then we see that we're in Old Fort Sumner in 1879. And this used to confuse me like a little bit in school when we would learn about Fort Sumter, where they had the gold rush in 1849 in California that the 49ers are named after. It's no relation to Old Fort Sumner in New Mexico. And then Arkansas Dave and the boys, they roll into Old Fort Sumter, and the locals, largely prostitutes, are pretty happy to see them, it seems like. And then actor Tracy Walter plays Beaver, I think, and he lets them know what's been going on, that militias and bounty hunters are rolling through looking for them or anybody that was in the Lincoln County War to round up, especially Billy the Kid. The Lincoln County War being the events of the first Young Guns film. Then we have where Balthazar Getty rolls up. And do you know anything about Balthazar Getty?
No.
His dad was the guy. Have you seen the movie All the Money in the World from a few years ago with Mark Wahlberg?
I usually watch Mark Wahlberg movies late at night, so like they kind of run together.
Fair. This was about like in the 70s, the J. Paul Getty's grandson got kidnapped by dudes and they cut his ear off, like one of his ears, they cut it off and sent it back to the family. That was his dad. Balthazar Getty's dad was the guy that got kidnapped.
Oh, okay.
This actor.
I feel like I've heard that kidnapping story with the ear before.
Yeah, it was big, like maybe like around the time you were born.
Okay.
He thinks Arkansas Dave is Billy, and Arkansas Dave is very quick to introduce himself. And you can see that he craves notoriety, and he says he killed 65 men, not counting Mexicans and Indians. So we also see that he's kind of racial. So then Getty goes in and meets Billy and calls him the Prince of Piss, Stoliers, and he wants to ride with him. And Billy shows him his shot leg and tries to dissuade him from riding with him. And this is where we find out, like, did you even ever know the name of this character growing up? That Balthazar
Prince of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that's what I called him. I called him the Prince.
I always like want to call him the Prince of Pistoliers, and then I'm like, hey, no, it's Prince of something else. Then I get to Prince of Pennsylvania. But yeah, no, I didn't realize his name, I guess, is Tom.
Yeah, his name's Tom O'Falyard. And I guess the real Tom O'Falyard would have been 21 in 1879. He was one of the regulators, and he was known as Billy the Kid's best friend. And in reality, the real pals that are buried together, allegedly with Billy the Kid's body, are Charlie Beaudry and Tom O'Falyard.
Oh, okay.
So,
cool.
Like, those guys...
Which that makes sense for why in the movie they make Billy seem like more connected and heard about this kid's death than he really should be.
Yeah, and I guess
really,
the way he dies in the movie is how the real Tom O'Falyard died.
Okay. But, he only rode with them for a little bit, and, Billy the Kid seems like he's probably a sociopath, so he probably didn't emotionally connect quickly to anybody, and he seems more tore up about this young kid's death than like most anybody else's death along the way, besides the rancher dude in the first one. What's his name? Tunstall, yes. So that always seemed a little odd, but now that you're telling me like that they're probably maybe giving homage to actual real guys that he was buddies with some of these names of the characters that like are in the movies, then that makes a little sense that he would be like more tore up about that dude's death than it should be in the movie.
So then Beaver throws Balthazar Getty out. So he's been coming around stealing food and stuff. And then cavalry soldiers come into Beaver's place. They hire this like drunken prostitute, calls the soldiers hotos, and they go away without finding Billy or Arkansas Dave and stuff. And then we have where we're back in Lincoln County, and Doc Scurlock is thrown into a pit of a bunch of like prisoners who've been rounded up. And he's thrown in the pit by the character Bob Olinger, who's depicted in a lot of Billy the Kid movies. Like one of the best, if not the best, Billy the Kid movies actually to me is Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And Bob Olinger was pretty nasty in that. And then he's played by Leon Rippey, who is on the show Deadwood. Did you ever watch? Have you seen the TV show Deadwood?
No, I haven't seen it.
I didn't think so. I would recommend one of the best TV shows I think ever is this show Deadwood. It's heavily R-rated, especially for language, but it's a Western show.
Well, it's an HBO show, right?
Yeah, it's an HBO Western show.
That's like one of the few like streaming things we don't have, or not one of the bigger ones. So I haven't seen a lot of the HBO shows.
That's probably my favorite on there out of all their drama shows. Is probably Deadwood. And then we have an actor named Tom Kurlander as J.W. Bell, who looked familiar to me, but it may just be that I've seen Young Guns 2 so many times. 'Cause I don't think that guy's in much. It's kind of the dumb guy. And then,
he always strikes me as familiar too, but I don't know what else I had seen him in.
Yeah, I looked him up on IMDb, and I was just like, I don't know if I've ever seen him in anything except for Young Guns 2. Then Skylark immediately meets Chavez down there, and another fact about the real Chavez is that he once had a shooting match with Bob Ford, who's the guy who killed Jesse James. Later on, Bob Ford was like bragging in a bar or something, and Chavez was like, I bet I can outshoot you or something. Let's see that.
How did all these like dudes in the Old West even know each other?
I don't know.
It's like everybody seems to know each other and have interacted with each other when you start hearing all these stories, you know? It's like,
well, I think even Arkansas Dave, they say, was up in Deadwood at some point. That's in North Dakota.
And these guys seem to get around a lot.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's because that would be up like on the Chisholm Trail. That stuff's far apart in days without cars.
Yeah.
And some people think Arkansas Dave might have been one of the cowboys as well that were with Curly Bill Brocious in Tombstone.
Well, that's what I wondered earlier, but
yeah, some people say that, but it's unknown. No one knows. That's kind of conjecture.
Put in a movie, and then everybody will believe it.
That's true. So then Pat Garrett comes to Beaver's place and tells him outside Beaver's place that there's a new governor and he wants Billy to testify against the Murphy boys. Then they have kind of some horseplay fight, and then a Mexican dude comes up that Billy knows, then tries to kill Billy, and Billy kills him because I guess there's a $500 bounty out on Billy at that point. Then there's a big shootout with soldiers. And a lot of action with fast cutting and whip pans. Like, we've already had a couple of good action sequences here already with them in the shootout in the beginning. That's the thing that's different from the first movie, is like they don't have that many action scenes early in the movie. It takes a while to get going. Like, you never really see the regulators regulate.
Right.
You hear they're pretty good, but then they mostly seem cowardly. They're always like, hey, Billy, you go in there.
Right.
Somebody throws Billy a horse, and Billy rides out. Pat Garrett and Balthazar Getty are happy to see him ride out free. And then we meet Scott Wilson playing the Governor Lew Wallace. Scott Wilson usually plays a really spaced out guy in the movies, so him as this governor is a little more with it or something. Billy gets offered leniency in exchange for testimony, and Brushy Bill, he demands a full pardon, and Wallace wants him to testify and leave New Mexico forever for the pardon, and with a staged arrest for his protection from the Murphy boys, who he thinks will come and try to lynch him before the trial, or just if he's in town for the trial, just come and kill him. And this is where we have the part where Billy asks for the cake.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty funny. He's like, no, but he says sweet icing.
Yes, the sweet frosting. What other kind of frosting would be on the cake?
And you kind of wonder if that's you're seeing the way people used to say it originally, and it's maybe evolved to just say icing now or frosting now.
Yeah, would the chocolate cake have had bitter frosting?
Well, I wondered if it didn't have any.
Oh, it may not have had any. That's a good point. Yeah,
I've watched a lot of times when it shows the scene, and I feel like it just doesn't have any.
Yeah. I think you're right. But he makes the deal once he gets the cake, and he doesn't like having a plate or something, right? He just
right.
Eats it.
He tries to be all I don't know, proper. That's what I'm looking for. He tries to be all proper about how he is going to eat it with his hands. He's
yes.
he exaggerates it, it makes it more proper that he's the way he's doing it. When you're still holding it with your hands. Okay. But yeah, and then you got the iconic scene right after that where he's got the bet.
Where he shows the Lew Wallace wants to show Billy the Kid off to all the dudes.
Well, that he can shoot all 6 candles with only 5 bullets. So he shoots 3 of them, and they're you got 2 bullets left and 3 candles. You can't do this. And you see Billy pull his gun out. Has he put them back in? I can't remember now if he shoots. That scene where him and the governor make eye contact, what are you actually going to do here with this gun? Mm-hmm. And Billy kind of smiles at him don't worry about it, and turns around, shoots the candles. And then they're you got 2 candles with 2, what is it?
He needs to get 3
I messed all
with
this
2
up, man.
bullets.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So he has 3 candles with 2 bullets left. Yeah. And they're what are you going to do? You can't do it. You're great, but you can't do that. And somehow Billy shoots the edge of the candle just enough to spin the whole thing. Yeah. It's like a menorah type thing.
Yes.
Looks like a menorah, and it spins sideways, and it lines the candles up, and then he shoots it with, 1 bullet. He shoots all 3 candles or whatever.
And they're all very impressed.
Right.
But right before that, we see where we get Skurlock and Chavez that are hanging out, and they're supposed to be hanged in the morning. And Chavez tells Skurlock he'll see the spirit horse before he dies. And Kiefer's like, I don't want to die, I want to escape. And Chavez is like, me too.
Right. Yeah, he was like, that's the most obvious like thing ever. He's like,
yeah, duh.
You're like, he's being all like Native American, like with the spirit horse and all that, and like you're gonna be taken, you know, and the ancestors are gonna come get you. And it's like, I don't want to die. And Chavez is like, I don't either, man.
I think in particular, like, I think like sometimes in the first movie they're kind of inconsistent on how they write Doc Skurlock. It's not so much that Kiefer Sutherland's acting isn't good in the first one. It's just sometimes his character seems different from other times. But I think that Chavez, Lou Diamond Phillips, I think is a much stronger actor in the second movie.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, he's good. Because in the first one, he has that whole speech about his, like, village getting killed, and he kind of seems like he's in a high school play or something when he does it.
Right, because, like, seeing that as an adult, like, the story strikes you as like, man, you should have probably been crying.
Yeah,
I mean,
you should have been way more intense.
Like this shot, like hearing it now as an adult, I was kind of like, how did I not hear this as a teenager or as like a young person? This story about this Native American genocide, you know, like it didn't impact me at all hearing it as a youth. But now, like, you know, as older, it's like I'm like paying attention, like I said, more to some of what I'm hearing, and it's like, wow, like he really did not deliver that well.
No,
like, you know, he did not draw you into that story like he should have.
It's boring when he does it. But in this movie, he's gold.
Yes.
So then we got Billy's in jail living it up. And this is where D.A. Ryerson comes to visit him, played by R.D. Call, who plays a hard ass in like every movie he's in. He's just like a classic movie hard ass. And he's like an Irish politician in this one. And he says that Billy will not get the pardon because he'll never get to testify. Because he decides who testifies, and because he's the DA, he calls the witnesses, and if he doesn't testify, he doesn't get the pardon. So he's never going to call him as a witness. And then he's like the governor's riding out of town at the time, and Billy's like, I guess the governor didn't have power over the Irish politicians that were in with the Murphy boys and against them.
Right.
And so he gets no help. And this is where he says he should have killed the governor when he had a chance. And we find out about Billy having the big wrists and small hands.
Right.
And gets out of his cuffs. And this is where we get where Leon Rippey is taunting Skurlock and Chavez in the pit with the how much food they have for them, which is feces, manure.
Right. And there's as much of it as they want to eat.
Yes. No one likes a smart ass Skurlock. And then so Billy breaks out of jail and spits down on Leon Rippey. And Rippey doesn't see Billy. No one sees Billy. But Rippey tells the Skurlock and Chavez and all those dudes that the lynch mob might come for them before they even get hanged. And
right.
then we get night falls on Linkhattan, and the lynch mob shows up. And Rippey doesn't try to stop them at all. He greets them happily and just waves them in. And then Emilio does a fake Irish accent as a lynch mob or guy with the mask. We don't know it's him. And they ask for Billy, but he's like, Billy got out, but we've got his buddies here. And they're like, all right, go ahead and get them for us. And then Billy and maybe Pat reveal themselves to
So
Chavez.
I got a question about that scene. Do you ever wonder how did he know they were in there?
It's a good question. Maybe they were told. I think I was kind of confused by this reading the Wikipedia of Chavez. So he and Billy were both witnesses in a trial about that house. So is this maybe that trial? Maybe he knew when he was in that cell, news had filtered in. And also, it's like when he's up there spitting down on Leon Rippey is talking down in there to them.
Right. So he may have just seen them.
Yeah, he may have seen them, heard them. He may have gotten jailhouse chatter from the guards, be like, "We've got your buddies down there." I think we don't hear him know it, but I think it's pretty believable that he would know.
Because I've always wondered what's the point of him coming back into town like that.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
But because they don't show us him learning that they're in there. I mean, that is the most likely scenario, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
In hearing about them being down there, haven't seen them down there, but we don't know why he decides to come back to town, and it's always kind of like that just doesn't seem like a smart move. But
yeah, I guess it's to get his gang back together. We find out later how desperate he was to have a gang.
Right.
So they're saving their buddies and no one else. And then the real lynch mob shows up. Although I guess that, maybe the Murphy boys that are on trial, I don't know if they're bailed out or something. They might be down in there with Chavez and Scurlock. There could be some kind of fight down in that pit. But anyway, they lead Scurlock and Chavez to safety, except the real lynch mob shows up and we get another big action scene.
The scene where Billy's like talking to him and Doc's like, I'm just a school teacher from New York. Like that scene is... I could never watch him in like 24 or anything because of that scene. Like I always just see him as that whiny dude in that scene in everything now. He does such a good acting of being like kind of like a whiny, I don't really want to be here and you're just dragging me along and I shouldn't have any responsibility for these deaths and all that. Like bugs me so much. Like he bugged me so much in that scene that like I can't watch 24 or any of the other stuff he's in now.
Yeah, a lot of Scurlock's moves in this are pretty stupid. Yeah, he really does just want to run out on everything. So the real lynch mob shows up and we get a big action scene with lots of fire and stuff. And I was thinking about, because I was watching, what was it? Your son, he asked me if I would watch all the Marvel movies. And last night I was watching Black Panther. And I was thinking like, in Young Guns too, when they have stuff they're actually setting on fire and stuff, these sets and things and all this stuff, it looks cool. And like in Black Panther and stuff, it's like they can have a flying spaceship, but I don't believe they're actually fighting outside on a sunny day. It's just not as cool when they're using computers to me for some reason as it is to actually see something be set on fire, a real horse running around, all this action.
Well, I didn't look at it, but I mean, you're probably right because I saw something the other day about how they did the CGI for the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. And people don't like the CGI version of a T-Rex the same as like they did the original. People actually thought the original looked better than the CGI.
Yeah, it's like there's something, where I don't know. Like it's obviously it is real fire. It's not like puppets or something anyway. But yeah, it's more thrilling to me. Even if it is kind of like, I do feel like one problem with this movie is with all of its cutting around in the action scenes. They're fun, but if a slightly surer hand with action, like, it's not like watching Heat or something where you can just always tell where every actor is and what's going on. Like it's not choreographed quite as well as I'd like these action scenes, but they're still fun. And it's fun watching them run around and like fight the lynch mob. Also, this is where the pit of people come out, and the first guy out of the pit of people when all this confusion is going on of prisoners is John Bon Jovi in his cameo. Right. And he immediately just gets killed. And speaking of that, did you ever spot, he's easy to spot, I feel like, in his cameo. It looks exactly like him. He's just dirty. But what about in the first one, Tom Cruise is in it? Now that
you're saying that, I feel like I've watched for him before, but I don't remember where his cameo is.
Even watching for him, I couldn't find him. But someone nice, if people want, they can go on YouTube, and someone has made a video where it isolates and like shows and slows down and pauses on each of their cameos, on both guys' cameos. And once you see, it's like they've really made Tom Cruise up. He's like obviously in a shot. Once they show him, you're like, oh yeah, that's him. But he's got like a big fake beard and stuff.
Okay.
It's like, but you can tell.
Do you remember what scene it is?
It's in the big shootout at the end at the house. He's one of the guys shooting at them.
Okay.
Yeah, you think he gets killed too, I think. Like, yeah, it's like but he's in the foreground of a shot. They're not even hiding him in like a crowd. It's like you'll see him, like, just look up like on YouTube Young Guns cameo, Tom Cruise cameo. Somebody's made it easy. Slater runs out of rifle bullets and he gets kind of grazed by a bullet he's on a horse, and he busts through a window on horseback, a lot like he does on the skateboard in Gleaming the Cube. And then everybody escapes. They're out in the canyons or something, or out in the middle of nowhere, and we have Billy teasing Doc about having like gangrene in the shoulder, so some kind of shoulder injury, and telling him to hold still or he's going to shoot his cuff chain. And Billy brings up that they and Chavez are pals forever, and he's glad Doc and Chavez are back. And this is where we kind of like learn that Christian Slater's kind of a horse's ass, and he calls it his gang, and he says he hates.
Yeah, is this the first time?
I think it is the first time where he says it's his gang. Yeah, he says he hates Mexicans, and he gets really racial with Chavez, who repeats the same line from the first movie about being Mexican Indian, you son of a bitch, where he's like, or something like that. Billy tells tells the gang he intends to take the Mexican Blackbird, a broken trail down to old Mexico. And he says...
Which for Doc and Chavez, they should have like known right then something was up. Because in the first one, they try to do that the whole movie. They try to go to Mexico, basically, and he talks them out of it. At one point, he even is like, he's always telling you got to test yourself every day. And
that's one of the classic things. You used to say this. This is one of the things you took from this movie as a quote in life, is like, you got to test yourself every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you still test yourself every day?
Well, you can see I got a neck brace on. So, yeah, I've continued those daily testings, and my body's gotten older, and it's caught up with me, you don't get shot when you're like 21 or 22 in the back by one of your buddies. Some of the testing every day don't work out well in the long run. But I mean, I think it's still mentally and stuff. You got to test yourself every day. I feel like that's a good philosophy, especially for the mental part of it. I think you definitely got to be able to still play chess no matter how old you get.
So Billy tells Doc that guys will come up and get his family and bring them down to Mexico once they're down there. I don't think I would believe him if I was Doc either.
Right, and because Billy even is like, that would be the greatest test ever, is trying to make it to Mexico. You guys, I'm in. And that's when they're like, oh wait, this is a bad plan. If Billy thinks it's a good plan.
Yeah.
So then in the second movie, when he's like, yeah, let's go to Mexico, they should have already known, man, Billy's got a plan for getting to Mexico. It's not a good plan.
Well, then Dave steals the plan. It's like, all right, guys, we're taking the Mexican Blackbird. And then, And then Skurlock, Billy shoots the cuffs off Skurlock. And nobody follows Dave. Skurlock throws Billy his watch and says it's from New York. And he tries to tell him he'll give him the watch and he's going to take that horse. And then Billy's like, that horse isn't for sale, but I've got these boots. What's wrong with you? And then Doc Skurlock attacks Billy.
So he says they got these boots that are broke in.
Yeah.
And I've always understood that he insults him in some kind of way. But I don't know how either. I don't know why it's an insult, but it's obviously an insult.
I think he's saying you can't have the horse and ride away, which pisses Doc off. And the boots are I got these old boots. It's not really much of an insult, but Doc attacks him physically. Arkansas Dave roots for Billy to kill Doc Skurlock. Then this is where Billy tells Doc this John Tunstall story of the three Chinamen.
Did you see they also showed a little bit of Dave's character there too? Because he steals the watch. He grabs the watch out when no one's paying attention. He takes the watch. So you see that he's kind of like a scoundrel, even with the dudes that he's supposed to be pals with.
This is the first, I guess, scene where we get the Slater saying it's his gang. Other than, did you get much traction out of that joke? Did you find it more annoying or cool, him always trying to steal the gang?
I thought it was funny. I always laugh. Because I think it's because I have a friend, his name was Dave or David. So we always, me and him and his brother and all our other buddies that hung out in college and stuff, we'd always be like, it's not your gang, Dave. To him when he would try to come up with ideas or be trying to be this is what we should be doing. Someone would be like, it's not your gang, Dave. So I've always found it funny.
Watching it now, I thought it was funny when I was a kid, but at first in the movie I thought it was annoying, and then as the movie wears on, I thought it got better and better. And by the end, I was way in on the gag. But here I was all right, whatever. But then later on, especially, we'll get to it. But yeah, I started getting into it. But here's where we have the three Chinamen playing Fan-Tan.
Yeah.
Do you remember the story about one guy that they were going to turn in or something, and the third guy's like, I will finish the game.
Oh yeah, because that was another one of my philosophies in life for a long time too that I held on to. There was that story that once you start it, man, you got to finish it.
Pat also advises Doc Skurlock not to leave the gang. Tells him that there are bounty hunters everywhere, and they'll get Doc if he's off by himself. They'll find him. And then Chavez tells Skurlock that they'll both get killed if they go their own ways. They need the luck of Billy. And Skurlock still says no. He rides off on his own and then immediately gets caught by or doesn't get caught, but sees the bounty hunters and then turns tail and goes and tries to catch up with everybody else. And then this is where Artie Call is the DA. He tries to get the old sheriff to go after Billy, and the sheriff refuses and quits.
Yeah. What was he saying?
Drink turpentine and piss fire or something like that.
Yeah, I'd rather drink turpentine and piss on fire. Yeah.
So then Billy tries to get an army together, but only Alan Ruck shows up as Henry William French. And now Henry William French, I think, was not a real guy. I think this is a made up guy. There was a real guy named Jim French who was one of the regulators, but Buckshot Roberts, the guy that killed Charlie Sheen in the first one, he killed the real William Henry French, I think. Or not William, but the real Jim French. So there was a guy named French, but it wasn't in this, and his name wasn't Henry William. I don't know. Yeah, here's where I made the note about what you're talking about with Charlie Sheen walking out there. One crazy thing about that part where they killed Buckshot Roberts in the first one in the outhouse is if you think about it, that guy, Brian Keith, he didn't even have to show up for his entire cameo. Because a bunch of it, he's just supposed to be in that outhouse and he doesn't talk and you don't see him. It's like he could have just not even been there.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, he's just like, been like, he didn't have to come to work today. Okay, so then we have the part where they're hanging out and Billy asks Pat to saw off a shotgun and he calls him Big Casino. And that was Billy and Pat's nicknames for themselves in life were Big Casino, Little Casino. And Pat says he's going to split off on his own. He's going to buy that place and put a sign on it called Garrett's Place. He wants to be something while he still has a good name, wants to make a name for himself. And this is where Billy tells him the thing about how he never stole a horse from a man he didn't like. And if he didn't like him, he'd just leave him alone. He wouldn't take his horse. And Arkansas says, yeah, he'd just kill him. And then Pat's,
does he say something similar about not taking cattle or something from anyone he doesn't like in the first one or something?
Oh, I don't remember that.
I thought I heard that in the first one. I could be wrong, but I think he also says a similar line that he doesn't steal cattle from anybody he doesn't like either.
So then Balthazar Getty gets caught trying to steal food, and this is where Billy lets him join the gang as the Prince of Pennsylvania. Yeah, and I don't think even at this point in the actual movie Young Guns 2 they've even said his name yet. We eventually get it, but I don't think that they've said his name at this point in the movie. So that's why it was confusing. We find out that they think that John Chisholm, or Billy thought John Chisholm would give them money, and that John Chisholm really liked him, and I guess they did some regulating or something for John Chisholm and killed some dudes for him. John Chisholm's played by the great James Coburn, who played Pat Garrett in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, you should see that. It's slower than either Young Guns, but it's good. It's like James Coburn is awesome as Pat Garrett.
What about the rancher in real life? His name sounded familiar to me, even before I'd seen this movie originally. Like, his name was one of those names that stuck out to me.
Well, when you were a kid, well, maybe not when you were a kid, but the movie would have been newer when you were a kid. It predates you. There was a 1970 movie just about this guy called Chisholm, starring John Wayne as John Chisholm.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And also,
I've seen that.
We grew up with the Chisholm Trail, or we know about the Chisholm Trails where they took, is not anywhere near this, but the Chisholm Trail went through Dodge City. It was the big cattle trail up through, I think, Oklahoma and Kansas, and maybe all the way up north. I don't know. So so the Chisholm, John Wayne plays John Chisholm and has a lot of the events of Young Guns 1, but it also has a bunch of it's an old man John Wayne movie. He's an older guy in it and has nods and lines of dialogue from other John Wayne movies get repeated. And a lot of those people in those days, they age so poorly. Like the old guys that are brought back from other John Wayne movies are hideous, but it had a really funny ending. So John Chisholm, in this movie, he's a wealthy landowner, and it ends with him on his own property, and he still rides off into the sunset because it's John Wayne. And when he rides off into the sunset off his own ranch, somebody's like, "Where's he going?" And there's just no good answer. And Ben Johnson's there, and he's like, he'll be back. And that's the
they say that in the movie?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Where's he going? He'll be back. Yeah, because you're like, why is he riding off? He lives here. John Chisholm is not going to give them any money. And he says if they don't leave, he's going to have his men shoot him. And they're like, it's like those men we rode by. And then this is where French tells Chisholm that he took his farm. Chisholm took French's family's farm and a lot of people's farm. And Billy the Kid challenges John Chisholm's best man to a draw. And he takes his own gun off and puts it on the ground. And when he does the countdown, instead of drawing, he just says Dave. And I think this is when I was watching the movie the first time where I was like, Arkansas Dave's awesome.
Yeah.
Because he just blows this guy away with a shotgun, and you get the feeling they've done this before. Like,
right.
or either that or he just knew, like, yeah, I'm just going to be ready to kill this guy at any moment. Yeah, because he says he's waiting for the guy to draw. And instead of counting to 3, he just says, Dave. And Dave blows the guy away with a shotgun. And we just cut to Christian Slater holding the shotgun that he's just fired on the guy. And
he's just nonchalant about it too.
Yeah, he doesn't, there's no fanfare. He just kills the guy.
Yeah, he just like, he could have been like taking out his phone to call someone. It didn't,
Yes.
It's just another action to him, like tying a shoe or something.
It's one of my favorite parts of the movie. Then they've got 2 other guys they're supposed to kill, and Billy calls on William Henry French to shoot the guys, and he's like, Henry, and Henry Allen Ruck fumbles for his gun and to kill the other guy.
Right.
So then somebody else kills him, and it turns out it's Doc Scurlock. And this pisses Chisholm off, and then they just leave. They don't get any money. They don't get killed by his people. So then Chisholm this pisses Chisholm off though, and he goes and meets with Arda DeCall and Scott Wilson, and this is where they decide to hire Pat Garrett to go after Billy the Kid. And Pat thinks they might be there to arrest him, and he tries to tell them how he's going straight, and they're like, no, we want to hire you to be sheriff. And Billy's gang they steal some cattle from Chisholm to sell.
That's when we see someone else famous in that scene too.
Oh, you're right. This is our first meeting of Poe, who is young Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah, which I didn't even realize till like way after Lord of the Rings. I just kept, every time I'd rewatch that movie, I'd be like, why does that guy look familiar? Originally he didn't, but then all of a sudden he started looking familiar. And it was like, why does he look familiar? And only because, I finally had IMDb app.
Yeah.
I figured out who it was. So.
He's good in the movie too.
Yeah, he is.
He and William Peterson have a good, they're both good in it.
It made me start wondering, what if that role or what role maybe made them see him as the person for Lord of the Rings.
Oh, he'd been around a long time, but you're right. I feel like he was, what year is, I'm not going to look it up, but he was the star of a movie around the same period called The Indian Runner. That's directed by Sean Penn, and it's not one that would lead you to think Lord of the Rings, but I was thinking when I was watching this time and thinking he's in a small supporting role here, but I wonder if he'd already been the star of that movie directed by Sean Penn. I don't know. He's not in this one. He's in this one quite a bit, I guess, but mostly as a background character, but he's good.
Yeah.
Really good. Poe is going to go with, we don't know that yet, I guess, that Poe is going to go with Garrett on the trail of Billy the Kid. Billy's gang, they rustle cattle from Chisholm, and to sell in town. And this is where William Henry French wants a nickname, and Billy won't give him one, says you've got to earn a nickname. Then we got where Pat Garrett goes to the newspaper office, and before he goes into that newspaper office, there's a part where he waits outside the office, and he feels people behind him, and he just turns around and draws his gun on this crowd of people.
That's the scene where we find out he accepted the offer. We don't know that he accepted the offer, and it shows him it shows his hands putting his guns in his belt and snapping his coat around him and stepping out that door.
Oh.
To walk across the street, and that's how we find out he's become the sheriff.
Yeah, why do you think he's so freaked? Why he's so paranoid? Do you think somebody just for they know, he feels like they know that he's betraying Billy and that they love Billy?
Yeah,
I'm kind of confused by this part.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he just felt eyes on him, and now he's probably, it's just supposed to show that he's his sixth sense is heightened, and he's taking on this new role, and he's going to be serious about it. And if any of you guys get in my way, you'll go down too. All that stuff's being sent there probably.
So he goes inside this newspaper office where the newspaper is being run by Ashman Upson, who is played by Jack Kehoe, who plays a pathetic dude in every movie. He always plays some guy who's in this one, he has a bad lung or something, right? He immediately tells you.
But he's a drunk.
Yeah, he's a drunk, but he also has some kind of injury that's made him move out to the West or something. It makes it seem like he shouldn't be on the trail. When he tries to beg off, I forget. But it's in every movie he's in, he does something like this. He's some kind of weasel. And I guess
he's Pat's dad, right?
No, he's just some guy.
I thought he was his dad.
No, he's not. He's just some failed writer guy. He's a failed newspaper man who ended up writing. He ghost wrote the Authentic Life of Billy the Kid book that Pat Garrett allegedly wrote. And
right. I don't know why I've always thought that was his dad then.
Yeah, it's not.
That's so weird because I don't know. I've just always had that in my head that he hired his dad to ride around with him.
So they enlist him. He enlists Upson to document the trip and write about it, to kind of help build. Pat Garrett wants to be famous. There's a lot about notoriety in this movie about how Pat Garrett and Arkansas Dave both want to be more famous than they are. This is where they get accosted by Viggo Mortensen and some guys, and they're going to go along with them. Billy's found a newspaper article about Pat Garrett being assigned to track them down, and he shows it to the gang, and they shoot it up, or he shoots holes in the article, and there's no mention of Arkansas Dave in the article, and Dave's pissed.
All right.
And then Dave tries to lead the gang again, and they don't follow him. They follow Billy. And then this is where we get to the Apache burial ground. And Chavez insists that they go around it. And Dave starts insulting it and being like, and Apache bones are selling trinkets, blah, 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 and all this stuff. And this is where they get into the big fight about whether or not to go through the graveyard between Arkansas Dave and Chavez. And it turns into a knife fight. And Dave throws sand in Chavez's eyes like in Bloodsport. And then
wait. Who didn't want Chavez's knife growing up though, man?
Oh,
I mean, was that the coolest knife ever with finger ring and like blades coming out both ways? You're just like, okay, if you're going to be in a knife fight, that's the knife to have.
True. So Dave tries to attack him with a femur.
Right.
Then he buries his knife gets stuck in Chavez's forearm. And I guess according to IMDb, this wasn't in the script, that it was that his arm was supposed to get injured in the fight. This happened, they decided to give Lou Diamond Phillips an injury because his arm got broken by falling off or being dragged, or something happened with a spooked horse due to a gunshot in another scene. They don't really have earplugs for horses. With all the westerns that got made with all these guns, do you think that like it contributed to hearing loss in the equine population?
Sure. We should start a nonprofit to help get them all like surgery or something, get that hearing back.
So Chavez still, even with the knife buried in his arm, beats Dave. And so this is where Dave plays dirty and goes for his gun to kill Chavez. And then everybody else in the gang draw their guns on Dave instead of Chavez.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the fight.
That's like one of my favorite scenes. Because like that's when you're like, okay, these dudes have some honor among them. And they're like, no, don't think so. This is a knife fight. It's like, and they just sit there. That's the other thing. They just sit there and watch. Like they're not getting involved. They're not like, let's break it up. Like you kind of wonder if they would have let one of them kill the other one with a knife, but just were like,
no,
guns are out.
Yeah, guns are out.
But yeah, so I love that scene.
Brushy Bill points out that Dave knew the value of a good bone-handled knife, and Dave goes and pulls his gun or his knife out of Chavez's arm, and they do go around the cemetery. Chavez won.
We were going around that cemetery.
Yes. And so then we get Poe and Garrett tracking the gang. Kehoe wants a bowel movement, and this is where we find that Billy has left behind where they were previously a buffalo scrotum coin purse, and it has the article that they shot up inside of it as a message to Pat. And I guess it was Pat's buffalo scrotum that he gave to Billy or something. And
yeah, it said it was like from his first big kill or something.
Then they enter a town that doesn't cotton to scum. Oh, this is the first time we get Tom's name mentioned, I think, is that he asks what scum is, and Billy's like, well, Tom, scum is politicians, bankers.
Right.
So then they go into the bordello with Jane Greathouse, played by Jenny Wright, who I don't really recognize from anything else. She just does not seem familiar.
I don't remember her from anything else either.
And Billy brags about his reward price being like $1,000 now. And she's like, I thought it was $500. He's like, no. And then this is where they lie to her about how old Tom is to try to get him laid. And Slater asks for extra booze, and he demands women for his gang. And she says the code for getting women is to ask for a certain kind of scotch.
Right.
Nice scotch. You get the feeling they have a lot of history, and even Doc knows her from before. He's like, you're like a woman born to this, to the manor born, Jane. And now we go back to Pat's posse, and they're gonna...
Which I didn't understand that line growing up. Did you understand it?
No. It's like... It's her being like classy talking about the scotch.
Yeah, the type of house that she was born in would be a manor.
Yeah.
But like when I was younger, I didn't understand. Like when he was saying to the manor born, I was like, what? But as I got older, I realized like, oh, he's talking about the type of house, and that she would have been from a rich family.
That she fits in a respectable house. Yeah,
right.
She's got these manners, and from a manor. We're back with the posse, and this is where they want to go south to Mexico, of course, tracking Billy. But Pat says, no, let's go north because there's going to be a town. He needs to encounter a town because he wants to get laid. Billy won't go that long without a lady. And so then we have Kehoe off defecating, and he rolls up on some Apaches, and they draw their guns on everybody. But then it scares everyone. But it turns out Jack Kehoe speaks Apache, and he saves the day. And this is where Mortensen tells Garrett that he needs to have a bowel movement.
Right.
Now we have them in the bordello, and Skurlock is speaking his own poetry to a prostitute who's never heard of him, which brings back more the theme of notoriety. Tom loses his virginity to a prostitute and is excited. Then he notices the mob of citizens outside. They're there for the scum, and they name the scum inside that they demand to have come out, and they name Arkansas Rudaball, and he's very excited. This is where Skurlock says, I'm real happy for you, Dave. You talk about how annoying Kiefer Sutherland is, but I thought his comic timing with that line was really good.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's good in the movie. I just, for some reason, that line from the beginning, like, always just bugged me so much. Like, seeing him in anything else, like, I just couldn't picture him as anybody but that whiny character. But yeah, like, now that you've, like, mentioned the whole, like, wanting notoriety, like, I had not picked up on that before. That theme going through it.
Yeah.
And now that you're mentioning that, like, I'm realizing, like, and, like, they constantly have Billy the Kid saying he's the one that can give the notoriety.
Yes.
You can't go get it. I give it. I decide to make you famous.
We missed when they were at Chisholm. Skurlock says they just want some money to go under. Chisholm says, oh, you'll get under, Doc. All you little Billy bastards, because you're Billy the Kid, too.
Right. We see, like, Doc maybe has the most character development then, because, he comes back and he's, like, telling Chavez that he didn't write that stuff and that he always wanted to tell him that.
Yeah.
But then we see him falling back into the pattern of taking credit for other people's poetry.
He might have written that, though. That might be something that's his. I don't know. Did you look at this up? I didn't recognize it.
Oh, no. I just assumed that the other stuff he started saying again was like, yeah, they started lying again about the poetry.
That would be funny. I don't know if that's the case or not. I'm not educated enough about poetry.
Yeah, that's just what I assumed, since like all his other poetry was like not really his. Yeah, I assumed that like when he started telling it again, that after you're saying that thing about wanting to be having notoriety, it's like he started wanting that again. He started like, that made me think that maybe that's why he started telling the poetry as if it was his again. It was because he was falling back into that same mindset that the rest of them were in, because he's back in that, that lifestyle. Setting. Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. I don't know if it's the case or not, but it totally would make sense. It would be good if it is. It would be better if it is.
Yeah.
So then the mob takes Jane outside, and like they take her and they send in their deputy, James Carlisle, and they say if he's harmed inside talking to the gang, that they'll string Jane up and burn her to death.
All right.
And Billy gives the gang instructions to look respectable. And then he tells O'Fallard, this is the last time we find out Tom's last name. He tells Balthazar Getty to disappear. So then Carlisle comes in and he finds them reading papers and chilling, and Dave's playing solitaire. And this is where I think him being the leader of the gang joke started working for that. Dave claims to be the leader of the gang, and Billy says R0, R2, and the way the camera whips between them, I thought I don't know, I liked it.
Yeah, that's definitely when it came to fruition. That's when the joke, it became a joke.
Yeah, it started being funny to me there for sure. And then Billy mocks the nervous deputy who says he does things the law way. And he's like, okay, right, Mr. Law way. And the deputy says that the crowd wants a hanging, and he makes the idea that maybe they just give him Chavez and the rest can ride free. And Billy agrees and takes Chavez's hat and his blanket, and he asks for the deputy's hat. The deputy's like, why do you need my hat? And he's like, I think I need it. And he gives him, or he says he doesn't know what it has to do with it. And he's like, I do, and pulls a gun on him. So the deputy gives him his hat. They put the Chavez's hat on and blanket on the deputy, and then they tell the deputy he doesn't understand the meaning of the word pals. And then they force him out the door, yelling to the mob that they're coming out shooting. So instead of the mob, of course, they all kill the deputy. And the mob, they disperse in consternation at murdering their own deputy. And Bill Roberts says in narration that he got credit for killing
like
the
they just gonna leave him there and leave too. Like they're all just like, oh, that's the sheriff. sheriff or deputy.
Yeah. They
Go.
just leave
Time to
his
go
body
home.
there.
Bye. See ya. Good seeing you. See you at church on Sunday. It's like bouncing out. They're just going to leave him.
Then they really do, because the posse rolls up and the corpse is still out there on the street when Pat Garrett rolls up there. And then they go inside.
And that made me start thinking about, too, I think at that point, I think it was one of the first times I started thinking about like all these other dead bodies that they just leave around in the desert and places, too.
Oh, yeah. For buzzards to pick clean.
Yep.
So Pat talks to Jane, and you find out that they have history, too. Pat's partied there with Billy and with her, and she tells him she doesn't sleep with lawmen. He says he doesn't keep with whores anymore. Then he burns the place down. This is where she rides out nude like Lady Godiva. This is your great theater moment, telling the crowd they can kiss her behind.
Yeah, that scene was like the one, like I said, in the theater, that was like, just as a 15-year-old kid, I was just sitting there going, what?
I think the first time I saw nudity in a movie at the theater, and maybe not, but maybe was, I don't think it was you, but I went with somebody and saw the movie Nuns on the Run. And it may have been my buddy Michael, and it was like a movie that was rated PG. It wasn't a movie you'd expect to have nudity in it, much like Young Guns 2 was rated PG-13. And just all of a sudden, it's like there is like a shot by like a shower or something. You see some naked girls, and I remember it being really like freaked out by it, and thought I would somehow, like, I think I told my parents that there was nudity in the movie when I got home, in case they ever saw it and I got in trouble or something.
That's funny that you told your parents.
Yeah.
But that scene stuck out to me so much that, like, I mean, that image is burned in my head, but I did not even realize that you see a guy's butt a couple of times in Young Guns 1 until I watched it with my daughters.
Oh. Well, there's also a naked lady in Young Guns 1.
Yeah, you see a guy, like, they take baths a couple times.
You're right.
You see them standing up and sitting down, and I was like, I never even noticed. And like when that came on my oldest daughter was in the room, and her brother started being like, you seeing that? And she was like on her phone, like, what? And I was like, there's a guy's butt on the screen. And like she looked up and it already passed by, and I was like, oh, you missed it. That's your chance. And like a little while later, like another one comes on, and Andrew's like, there's another butt. And she looks up and is already off the screen. I was like, missed it again.
That's funny, man. I didn't even consider like that. Yeah, like Young Guns 1 like has a few like with the prostitute later who's naked in Young Guns 1. You're just like, they could have just cut that. That's totally gratuitous nudity. This Lady Godiva.
Yeah, but you don't see anything in with her, do you?
In Young Guns 1, you do. There's a part where I think it's Casey Size-Mako as Charlie Beaudry is with a prostitute, and you totally see a boob. Because I was watching it this last time it's on IMDb TV for free online. I was like, why is this rated R? I thought I remembered it having nudity or something in it. And like at some point, there is a boob in it.
Wow. I could not even tell you how many times I've seen that movie. I've never noticed it.
It's like the lady's hair is falling around her boobs or something. And you're like, they really could have just cut that. Didn't really add much to the movie. Wasn't very sexy or B necessary.
Was that the scene where Billy the Kid's talking to that guy at the bar?
I think
so. He's like, yeah. So I probably, because I'm focused in on that part of the scene. I like that part where he's like, well, what would he look like?
Yeah.
Oh, I see him right there. He's like, where? Right there. He's like pointing at the mirror.
Yeah, and then like somewhere else in the same establishment in a room, Casey Size-Mako's with a lady.
Yeah, I think that when that scene's happening, I'm always kind of like anticipating the part where they get back to the bar with Billy the Kid.
Yeah, totally. It's not a good part of the movie, except for the Billy the Kid part. Yeah, this is where the gang rides into the guano mining camp, which used to make me laugh when I was a kid. When he's like, "I never been to a bat poop town."
Right.
And Garrett's posse finds them here. This is where we have a big shootout. We're pretty far into the movie at this point, and there's a big shootout here. They ride for the canyons, and they come to this steep drop off a canyon cliff. They all stop with their horses there, but Chavez is behind them on his horse, and he's shouting "Atse, Atse" repeatedly. Then he rides down the cliff wildly with the horse, going crazy, and then all the other horses follow the first horse, and you get some good horse stunt action going down this cliff.
Yeah, I was wondering how they got those horses to fall.
All these stunt horses are like impressive in these old westerns.
You wonder
how much horse abuse just happened, but yeah, like trick riders and trick horses. They say this is one thing I was was thinking also, is like, people always talk about horses being dumb, and you're like, are they? These stunts are pretty impressive.
Right. I always thought horses were supposed to be pretty smart, but
oh, maybe I'm thinking of sheep.
No, sheep are supposed to be stupid.
Yeah, I don't know. So Garrett,
I always thought horses were like supposed to be like super smart animals.
Yeah, I don't know, but if they look smart to me in the movies. Like I watch a lot of westerns, and horses do a lot of things. So Garrett's boys, they shoot down, but they don't chase down the hill. But they get Arkansas, they shoot Arkansas Dave's horse out from under him, and Chavez picks him up. And so here we have more. Chavez is always a nice guy. He's the one that got them horses when they in the first movie, when you think he's maybe run out on them and abandoned them. In fact, he's gotten them all horses. Here he retrieves Dave, who's been so mean to him, and saves him. Viggo Mortensen questions whether William Peterson really wants to even catch Billy, because he has maybe a shot on him and lets him go, or they don't follow them down that canyon. And this is where Dave asks Chavez what Otse means, that he was yelling at his horse, and Chavez says, stop.
Yeah, ancient Navajo or something for stop.
Yeah, ancient Navajo word for stop. And Billy plans to sell the horses and then take a skiff into Mexico, but they immediately run into Garrett again. This is where Garrett kills Tom. It's like somehow they get outflanked by Garrett's posse right here, even though they went down this care, because it's like they just turn around and it's there.
But you get the idea that, like, I felt like that was really quick. Yeah, because Viggo Mortensen's character, he's like upset that they're going that direction.
Yeah.
But Pat Garrett's like, oh, we got time. He makes it sound like we're going to just lazily go this other way and meander around and we'll meet him at the next town. And then all of a sudden he's coming up over the hill in front of them. And you're like, well, that was 100 times better plan than, like, why didn't you just tell that Viggo Mortensen's character, like, why didn't you just tell him, like, no, dude, we're getting ready to cut him off?
Yeah, they totally cut him off, like, immediately. Yeah, it was very confusing. This is where they kill Tom, who is in real life buried next to William H. Bonney's imposter and Charlie Beaudry. Then the gang holes up in an abandoned roofless cabin. And this is like a famous thing that happened. I don't know if this is Silver Springs, New Mexico or something. I don't know what the place now, what this is called. But yeah, so this is where the real Charlie Beaudry got shot up, in this abandoned roofless cabin here. Billy tells him he spent a lot of nights there. Then he says this is where he would have said anything to get the gang back together. And they're like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, the Mexican blackbird is really a half black, half Mexican prostitute. There is no trail. He just wanted them to ride together again. And he never really wanted to go to Mexico. He would have just been an old gringo down there. He wants to stay in New Mexico. And Skurlock says Billy's been believing his press and he's going to get them all killed like he did that 15-year-old boy. And then he takes aim at Billy and tells Billy he's not a god. Billy's like, you want to find out?
Yeah. And he's like, William H. Bonney, you are not a god. Like, that's at the beginning, like a John Bon Jovi song or something, isn't it? Because like I remember, like, every time you hear that, it's like I can hear that song starting in my head for some reason, but I don't know which song it is. But I'm pretty sure it's at the beginning of a John Bon Jovi song, like maybe off the soundtrack or something.
Yeah, he has at least 2 songs on the soundtrack, because there's the second one, like Billy don't take your gun, Billy take your guns, Billy take your guns, or Billy get your guns. I think it's the second song that you hear in the end credits after Blaze of Glory. They play both the songs at the end. Maybe it's at the beginning of the second one when it's recorded or something. I don't know. Or maybe it's at the beginning of Blaze of Glory. I can't remember. But at any rate, instead of trying to kill Billy, Doc just decides to leave. And when he exits the cabin, he's immediately sniped by Poe. And then the real Poe, he would be later elected sheriff after Pat Garrett finished out his terms. Poe became the new sheriff. The gang is besieged by the posse here at the cabin, and they're being shot down at. Doc, after he's shot, he's not dead. He just goes back into the cabin, falls back into the cabin, and they debate who should go out first in an attempt to escape. Who should go out shooting, and the rest, and lead with.
And Billy tries to give the gang to Dave.
Yes, this is Arkansas Dave volunteers William French, because he's never killed anybody, and they won't shoot at him. And French is like, they killed Tom. And then here's where Billy gives the gang to Dave and says, Dave, you lead us out. It's your gang. He's like, no, it's always been your gang. And then Billy draws on Dave.
He's like, no, it's your gang, Dave. And then that's when Doc steps up.
Yes.
And it's like, I will finish the gang.
And he draws both.
Referring back to the Fantan. Is that how you say it? Fantan?
Yeah.
Referring back to when Billy told him about the Fantan game. He's saying, I will finish the game. And then I always, like, this is the scene where I'm like, where remember it popping out to me how often Billy the Kid is giving someone a gun.
Oh,
and then the very next scene, he still has 2 guns.
I didn't even notice that.
He gives a gun to Doc. At one point, I think he gives a gun to the Prince of Pennsylvania, and he's always constantly spinning a gun and handing it to someone. It's all right, you're stepping up. Here's one of my guns. And I'm like, how many guns does this guy have?
So Doc, it's like he's gonna finish the game, and Doc leads them out. And Doc takes a lot of lead, fires a lot of shots, but the others all get away behind him. It totally works. They all get away, and Viggo Mortensen has a dead shot on Billy, but Garrett ruins the shot and helps Billy get away.
No, Billy doesn't get away.
Oh, you're right. Billy doesn't get away. Everybody gets away but Billy. I'm crazy. You're right. Billy does not get away. The other guys get away. And he starts
screaming at Doc. And he's like, thinks, Doc did this on purpose to him, screwed him over, helped everybody else get out but him. But Doc is obviously dead.
And then Chavez loses his mount here. And Arkansas tries to get William Henry French to just leave Chavez and run off with him, saying that it's no good. So after Chavez saved Arkansas Dave won't save Chavez. And but for William Henry French, he won't leave with Dave. So this is where Arkansas Dave abandons the gang and goes off on his own. And Chavez takes a bullet in the shooting, but French saves him, and they ride off. Billy gets caught and imprisoned, and this is where we have Billy's trial, where his sentencing, and where he's going to be hanged till he be dead.
Right.
How does Billy reply to that?
He's like, oh, well, the judge says, you got any last words? And he's like, you can go to hell. Yeah. I mean, because he says dead 3 times. It's so perfect.
Dead. And
that Billy responds. Him. Yeah. It's perfect.
Classic Emilio. And so then guard Leon Rippey's back as what's his name, Bob, whatever his name is, but Leon Rippey's back, and this is where he has the thing with the shotgun that's loaded with the 18 dimes in each barrel. And this is pretty much the beginning of the Pat Garrett Billy the Kid movie, I think, as they like.
Okay.
I think it starts, no wait, that's a lie, because it definitely has the Silver Springs shootout, because you see Charlie Baudry get killed in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. But yeah, this is towards the beginning of that movie. So no pardon has come down from the governor. Leon Rippey's pretty glad to have Billy back and is taunting him. And we see Chavez and French riding together to old Fort Sumter again. And Monobrow Bill, the guy that looks familiar, he's hanging out with Billy in his cell, and he's gullible. And Jane shows up and as a visitor, and she has hidden a pistol for Billy in an outhouse. And she tells Billy that she's opened a proper whorehouse, not a fancy club now somewhere.
So it distracts the guard so Billy can see the note.
Yes, that's right. Billy gets the note that tells him to go to the outhouse. And that's where Billy and the guard, they go to the outhouse, and Billy uses it and comes out and teases him. And when he was in there, he had the gun. We have a quick cutaway of Arkansas Dave riding alone from Mexico. And this is, I guess, where Billy reveals that he has the gun. Because we're back in the jailhouse now, and Billy draws on Bill, and then Bill
says his ongoing line of "I'll make you famous."
I'll make you famous. The notoriety, that's right. And then he really doesn't want to shoot him. He likes him.
Right.
And the guy goes for his gun anyway, and Billy makes him famous. And then Leon Rippey runs out of a saloon hearing the gunfire, and Billy busts out a window and says, "Hello, Bob!" And now he's got the gun with the $1.80 in dimes in each barrel, and he empties a barrel on him and says it's the best $1.80 he ever spent.
Yeah, you get his laugh.
Yeah, yes. And then Billy fires recklessly at a black guy. That wasn't very nice. Just a bystander when he steals that horse and rides away.
Oh, yeah.
Just shoots at a random dude. One thing in the first Young Guns that they got right, apparently, looking at is that I guess when the U.S. Army came out and was sieging that house at the end, that they really did bring the Buffalo Soldiers, and you see that in the movie. I guess, yeah, we see that Chavez and French are holed up, and Billy shows up, and he's in a great mood, and he wants them to go rustle elk and ride for Canada now.
Right.
It's his new scheme. It's pretty far away. And Chavez says, no, he thinks he'll stay there. And Billy cautions him that Garrett will take him. And Chavez says he already did when he took Doc. And Billy looks at the wound that Chavez got and says, that's a real bad wound. And I guess, but the real Chavez, of course, we said he lived to age 72. And then we have Chavez in the movie wandering alone away by himself into a cemetery while just walking through it, and Billy watching him. But we never see Chavez die.
Well, but you see the horse come for him.
Yeah, that's right. We see the spirit horse.
So, I mean, it's implied.
It's very implied. I'm just thinking here in Young Guns 3, how they can get around this. And
I feel like when you were saying earlier, he does a great job of acting in this one compared to the last one, because this really is the only death that even as a teenager seeing this impacted me. Like even today, like watching these movies, his death is still the only one that or the assumption of his death when you see the horse is the only one where it kind of hits me. And I'm like,
Yes. Well, part of this too, also not just that, is like that Emilio is good in this part. Because he's not bad in any of it, but his character in the movie is kind of one note. Like he's always just doing the same things over and over again and kind of playing the same kind of scene. But here where they need him to kind of have some kind of reflection and acknowledgement that he's led all these dudes to their deaths, it really works. You can watch him feel it. It's like he's pretty good in this. And
but you see Chavez is like the guy that he took them through all the Native American burial sites and through their camps and things, kept them safe. And he's got it rode back for them. He's got it came back with the horse. He's a guy that his whole tribe had genocide committed on it, but he's still here helping these white dudes and staying loyal to them. And they're picking on him and making fun of him through both movies. But then, you get that Billy the Kid actually liked this dude.
Yeah.
You think back, he treats him like he treats everyone else, with as much respect. I don't think I ever remember Billy making fun of him
never does any
or picking on him
that I can recall.
He's the one that Billy kind of leans on almost. And you feel it. You feel that loss. When he passes, you feel his loss.
Billy, he goes back inside and he tells Alan Ruck that he can have the nickname Buckshot George. Alan Ruck says, my name's William Henry French. And Billy says, that's a good name too. And that was Billy really acknowledging that maybe their way of life isn't as good as a normal way of life. I really liked Emilio in this sequence where he realizes the self-destruction. Anyway, so then Billy gets drunk or spirit worlded up again and goes out dancing. This is pretty crazy. There's his crazy dancing way, and we get the intercut with the swaying piñata. It's kind of not a paper mache piñata. It doesn't seem feels like it's a stone or a pottery piñata.
Yeah.
Ceramic. He gets a woman, and then they're in bed together, and he says something about meat or something being cured or cooled or something.
Yeah, she says she'll cook for him.
Yeah.
If he goes and gets some meat from the butcher dude.
And he goes out for a little stroll, and he leaves his gun, but he senses something when he's out there, and he says, let's finish the game.
Well, I think that, I don't know, there's been times in my life where I felt more when I was younger, where I usually would have had a weapon on me when I was out hanging out and doing stuff. And you would just, it felt weird to not even just have say a pocket knife on me.
Yeah, you left
for some type of protection when I left my house. And so I think that that's what you get there, is that this is a guy that slept with his guns. And so for him, this is the most dangerous moment for him that you're seeing him in, is for him to be without his guns. That's naked. He's naked. And I think he feels it. And then that's why it's let's finish the game, because he just can tell something's off. I'm never without my guns. I feel naked in this moment.
Implying that the lady set him up? I'm not sure.
I've always wondered if you're supposed to think she's in on it or not.
I'm not sure.
But, I feel like she has to be for Pat to be waiting at that guy's house.
Oh, yeah.
Because she directs him, go get the meat from so-and-so.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, Garrett finds him and asks him why he didn't go to Mexico. They talk it out, and Garrett is...
No, sorry. Or I've never known, like, does he go to that guy's house and Garrett's there? Or does he go get the meat and come back in and Garrett's waiting instead of the girl?
Garrett's waiting in this kitchen or something. Oh, we missed one thing. When Billy kills the guy in the hallway before he shoots the guy with the $1.80 worth of coins, later on, Pat, when he finds the scene of the crime, Billy's written Garrett's place on the wall in blood. Gotta note that. Yeah, but Garrett is just waiting there instead of the girl in the kitchen or something. I don't think it's in the bedroom. This is another one where maybe the directing of the movie could be a little better with the blocking and clearing. For as much as the movie's incredibly well paced, like it moves fast, but sometimes blocking and staging could be slightly better. Garrett asks him, why didn't you go to Mexico? And they talk it out. And Garrett tells him about all the times he shot everything around and give Billy the Kid a chance to get away. And he wouldn't take it. And so now Garrett has to kill Billy. And Billy's like, I could go to Mexico. And Garrett could lie and say he killed him. But Garrett says, no, Billy would come back. Billy, now he's kind of pleading. He's like, now he turns a little pathetic. And he's like, Pat, you killed the boys. And Garrett's like, no, Billy, you did. I was thinking that I was working on the assumption that Skurlock got busted teaching in New Mexico, and I was like, I gotta think he got himself killed, and Billy just prolonged his life. But I guess if he got busted in New York, according to this movie, doesn't make much sense. But anyway, so Billy's like, I always would do anything for a friend, for someone I love or something like that. So he turns his back to make it easier on Garrett, who is kind of faltering, struggling with killing his friend. And Billy says Pat will never be him, only the man who shot Billy the Kid. And we hear a gunshot. The piñata busts, and then Pat goes outside to an empty street.
When they have him kind of like look sideways and stare off sideways, kind of like they're supposed to be wondering, okay, was he watching Billy leave or not?
Oh, yeah. So then we have Billy the Kid's funeral. We cut to immediately, and Pat attends the funeral. And then we see an off-screen character's hand reach into frame and take the reins of Garrett's horse and steal it. And then we have Brushy Bill laughing in the 50s about never stealing a horse from a man he didn't like. And did he like Pat? He loved him. Right. And he does have scars. And in the end, he rides away on his burro. I think we missed where Arkansas Dave showed up in Mexico, asked the guys if they knew who he was. He immediately runs into just two Mexican dudes, and he's like, my name's Arkansas Ray Dave Rudabaugh. Do you know who I am?
He's stopped to water his horse and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And so, he asked those guys if he's in old Mexico yet. And then he says it again in Spanish, and they look up and are like, yeah. And he's like, I'm Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh or whatever. Yeah. Like, have you heard of me? And they're like, see. And then the one dude takes his knife out and starts testing how sharp it is. And you're like, oh, this is not going to go well for him.
No.
But he's not cluing in at all. He's just like, they know me. I'm famous here. Woo! And you're like, dude, you're getting ready to die.
This is where we get what happened to everybody at the end. We find out Dave was beheaded in Mexico, which is questionable. That is actually what is believed to have happened to Arkansas Dave. Some people say that he maybe killed someone in Mexico before it happened. Some people say that he didn't, that he was just beheaded as a message to other gringo outlaws. And some people say that that's not how he died at all. Like you were saying, you weren't sure. It's like, yeah, it's not 100%, but that's the best guess, is still that he's beheaded in Mexico. There's allegedly a photograph that is supposed to be of his severed head, but it's been debunked and is believed not to be even an old outlaw's head. It's supposed to be from maybe some old Central American war or something, or Mexican War of Independence or something. Some photograph that's people have faked as an Arkansas Dave photograph. In fact, I think all known photographs of Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh might be fakes, which makes it rough. So anyway, then it tells us that William Peterson and Jack Kehoe's book about the authentic life of Billy the Kid was a failure, and that in 1908, a 21-year-old young gun himself shot Pat Garrett dead. And Brushy Bill Roberts got his day in court November 29th, 1950. Several surviving friends of Billy the Kid testified to Billy the Kid being Brushy Bill Roberts, but no pardon or credence was given. Probably one of the greatest miscarriages of justice. You got Brushy Bill Roberts in New Mexico not getting his pardon. You got Jesus Christ and the Romans. You've got Dred Scott. You've got Alfred Dreyfus in France. Those are probably your big biggest miscarriages of justice. Then we get the Blaze of Glory.
Oh,
song.
well, and I mean, you got the big betrayals of Pat and Judas.
Yes.
And Brutus.
Yeah, Pat is one of the worst betrayals.
You always got to have the iconic betrayal, I guess, too, in these.
Yeah. Pat Garrett, what a douche. What's weird is in the first movie, Pat Garrett barely shows up. Like, you remember that Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's son, actually plays Pat Garrett in Young Guns 1.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, for like 1 second. And it's like, are we friends, Pat? Yeah, we're friends. And you're like, do they just do that so that they could throw in that he was friends with Pat? That's a weird moment in the first movie too. The first movie routinely kind of misses with big story points or something, like kind of their feeling after John Tunstall gets killed and stuff. A lot of things go right in that first one. It's entertaining, but it could definitely be better.
Well, I feel like they stuck Pat Garrett in there just as foreshadowing, not necessarily that they were going to make the next movie, but that like everybody knows he's supposed to be the guy that kills him.
Yeah, but they did bring up that, like, are we friends? And they'd never met at any other time in the movie.
Right. And then you start out in the second movie and, like, they're running around together. Yeah. But at the end of the first one, Pat's, like, headed back to Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
So he's going home for a while.
That's right.
So it's like, that's the other reason I'm always like, how much time has passed here that they're, like, running around in a gang together now? And have, obviously been still in, like, cattle together.
Not that much.
Because, like, Pat in the first one, he also comes across as kind of already being in with the politicians and being someone he's already like turned down being a sheriff or something once or twice, he says. So like I kind of like always like, how does he even end up being like running around with Billy the Kid by the time the second movie happens? Because it just doesn't fit like what you see in the first one, but obviously that's not historically correct. But
who was your favorite young gun when you were growing up?
Like
in these movies?
The characters.
Yeah, in either movie. Dirty Steve? Who's
number two? I mean, like, first one is, like, for sure Billy the Kid all by himself.
Okay.
But the second one is, like, a combination, like, Billy, Chavez, and Dave, like, make that movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the few movies I feel like where the second one's better.
I agree. I think the second one's better, too.
Yeah. And, like, I don't know I could really pick between those three guys on, like, who I like more in the movie. They all do a great job.
That's interesting. You know, first you say Billy, like I can understand that, but do you think that you have like an attraction to lead characters and stories that are kind of unlikable in some way? Like, because I feel like in a way they're trying to, like, they don't really portray Billy as being that great a guy in these movies. That's one of the things I really like about the Young Guns movies, is that especially in the first one, Billy's portrayed as kind of a douche that like is always just trying to be more murderous than everybody else. His only real thing in either movie is that he's loyal to his friends. He's like, but is kind of a guy that they're not supposed to kill that first guy in Young Guns 1, and Billy just immediately ruins all their lives by killing that guy.
Right.
And then he gets everybody killed in this movie. And I was thinking about, like, are you a fan? I know you like the band The Doors, but are you a fan of the movie The Doors?
Man, I watched that like once.
Okay. Never mind.
I mean, I know it's Val Kilmer playing him, and I think I felt like he did a great job playing him.
He was awesome.
I don't remember how much I did or didn't like the movie.
Fair. Because I was just thinking, like, Jim Morrison in the Doors movie is portrayed as being an incredible douchebag, even though Val Kilmer's awesome as playing it. But you're like, oh man, Jim Morrison just seems terrible in this movie. And the other guys in the Doors later on would be like, man, this movie's not accurate. We actually really liked hanging out with Jim Morrison. The movie makes him seem incredibly painful to be around. But
I think that like the Young Guns too, like just Billy the Kid in general, the reason I connected with him and felt like I connected to him and related to him was like I said earlier about growing up as a pastor's kid, I moved a lot. And so, I mean, for me, the loyalty that comes through is what was key to me. Because when you grow up moving a lot and you're constantly like, your friends are changing and stuff. Like that sense of loyalty that the regulators had to each other is like what made that movie special to me. And like even in college, among me and my friends that were also pastors' kids, because I went to a college connected to the denomination I grew up in. And so a lot of other pastor kids that I had known from like church camp and all that, like we all kind of formed a bond, you know, and then you also know we started like rollerblading and stuff because that movie Airborne came out around that time.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, kicked off the inline aggressive skating stuff with Chris Edwards. Well, so like we all like had that bond through this movie. And like even today, those guys would like sign off their text messages or emails to me or whatever with just pals.
Wow.
You know, even today, you know, like guys I haven't talked to maybe in 10 years. If they text me, I text them for some reason, that's how it just would be. So, I mean, there's something more to that movie for me than just being like a movie, you know, because I appreciated that sense of loyalty. So, yeah.
Billy the Kid, though, I feel like the more just wacky psycho in this movie that does have loyalty to friends, but the way that he's portrayed in these movies, I feel like is more accurate probably than the way that he gets portrayed in that Pat Garrett Billy the Kid movie or some of the other Billy the Kid movies, where he's like kind of more likable in a way to me. Or they're trying to make him more likable. I think these two movies, they don't strain to make him that likable. It's like they kind of portray him as, like you said, he's a sociopath. Like he's a fucking, maybe as a psycho. Maybe.
Yeah, and I think I also connected to the part where he's like anti-authoritarian.
Yeah.
Like if you're an authority, Billy the Kid does not like you. And, you know, I mean, grew up in the grunge era, the angst, all that.
Sure.
So, I mean, you know, it's authority. Like, you know, we had NWA, F the Police. I mean, grew up on Public Enemy songs, Ice Cube, Rage Against the Machine. So, man, just had that, like, Billy the Kid also was just one more person representing, sticking it to the man. You know, like, when it's like he gets deputized.
Oh, right.
But
it's very MTV like that. You're right.
He gets deputized, but he's still like, I'm doing it my own way, and gets him in trouble by killing that dude in the bathroom.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the other part of why I like Billy the Kid is that I see him as someone he's doing what's right in the sense that he's taking care of his friends and he's trying to correct the wrongs that were done against, you know, the rancher in the first movie and all that. And like by the second movie, though, you're correct. It starts being harder to see him as an anti-hero. He's less of an anti-hero in the second one, but for some reason I like him more in the second one, I think, because he's funnier, you know. Like he has better one-liners, and there's a little bit more like character development. So like you get to know him better, I think, in the second one.
So the end of the credits says this movie is based on characters created by John Fusco. Now, were these characters were they created by John Fusco, or were they created by God himself? Were they real people?
I mean, were the movies created by God himself?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Should filter down to us.
So he was doing on the 8th day. He was writing Young Guns 1 and 2.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, you know, as the people were real people. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like John Fusco, the writer of this, you're right. He had a lot of credits. A lot of them seem like more Western-y things. Like he wrote Thunderheart. That's a good movie with Val Kilmer. Let's see, he wrote Hidalgo with Viggo Mortensen.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the writers.
That's the one where they race the horses or something, right?
Yeah. He wrote The Babe with John Goodman as Babe Ruth. That didn't turn out so well. That's a hard movie to find. Oh, it's on Tubi now. I'm going to have to watch The Babe. I was wanting to watch that recently, maybe like a year ago. Oh, he wrote that new movie, The Highwayman, too, with Woody Harrelson and stuff that's on Netflix, where they go after Bonnie and Clyde. That's a good movie.
I feel like I've watched that like twice.
Oh,
and every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I should watch that movie. And I restart it, and I'm like, oh, I already watched this. Like, there's also a Van Helsing movie I do that with. Like that I'm always kind of like, oh, that's a cool topic. I want to watch that, and I'll start it, and I'm like, oh wait, I've already seen this. So I don't know what it is about certain movies, but it's like they sound really good and interesting, but then I'm like, oh, I already watched this, and so I don't remember them for some reason.
It may be just that The Highwayman is a weird title for that movie, right? Like, it's like, it doesn't seem like the title goes with the movie, because aren't highwaymen are criminals? It's a name for like a robber, but
right.
In the movie, they're cops. That's why Netflix recommends me The Highwayman, even though I already saw it. And I've almost clicked on it a second time myself. I probably will at some point on purpose click on it again.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard that that's starting to happen with that movie Red Notice also.
Is that new movie with Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah, that movie's been watched as many times or more times than like Marvel's Endgame.
Oh, wow.
And people like almost like can't answer questions about it after watching it. It's like they said it's like people almost forget the movie right after the credits roll.
Wow.
Like it's weird. I don't know.
Do you have any thoughts on any more thoughts on Young Guns 2 before we go to the Slater Raider?
And spoilers.
No, I mean.
All right, let's go to the Slater Raider. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give the movie?
Oh, well, it's a 10.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think I could ever honestly rate this movie. Unbiasedly, it's just going to be a 10. So
I'm going to try to unbiased review.
I might be able to do some unbiased stuff on the next questions, but the movie itself, like, yeah.
If you would have said any other number, I would have been sad. I'm going to make myself sad and say a 7. Because I could imagine a better movie than Young Guns 2. But it's definitely good. Like, I almost thought I wasn't going to enjoy it as much as I ended up enjoying it again. And it's just how fast it goes by. It's really, It's like you are not bored watching this movie. Then, second category, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give Christian Slater's performance?
10.
Yeah, I might have to go 10.
I mean, he steals every scene he's in, I feel like.
I agree.
Like, he does the most he can do with every line they give him.
This is him at his maybe some of his most Jack Nicholson-y. I feel like in some of the scenes, like he's very much like feels Nicholson-y. But yeah, once again, I got to give him a 10 because I don't think you could have done better.
Could I use him more? Is that question coming up?
That's coming soon. Yeah.
Okay.
The third category is how hunky is he in the movie?
I'll give him an 8.
8 is solid.
They don't downplay his looks all that much.
No, and his hair at times, sometimes his hair looks dirty and sometimes it's clean. I don't know if it's his greatest haircut. He's a little hunkier than I remembered him being in the movie, honestly. Like, I was thinking he was kind of ugly in the movie. I was like, no, he's pretty hunky. Oh, man, I'm tempted to I think I'm going to agree with you. Just go with an 8. I was thinking 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there, but I'm going to go with an 8, yeah. Then now for the final category, on a scale of negative points, 0 to 10, how much more would you have liked to have seen Christian Slater in the movie?
Well, I mean, I probably already spoiled this earlier, but I mean, like I said, I want a whole Arkansas Dave movie.
Yes, with Christian Slater.
Yes. With Christian Slater as Arkansas Dave.
So is that a 10?
Like, I want the whole movie.
What's your rating?
So that's how much more I need of him as that character.
Agreed. I'm going to give it a negative 10 because I want all 10. I want him to be in 100% more of the movie.
So then negative 10, I guess, if that, yeah.
Damn, we really took the score down for that movie with that, but it's honest. So,
oh, wait, I thought negative 10 mean you need more of him.
It does.
Oh, okay.
We needed more. But
okay.
That brings us to, you have trepidation about Young Guns 3. They've got Slater back, though. They've got Lou Diamond Phillips, and they've got Emilio. And I was thinking about this, is like, Emilio's going to direct it. I've never seen any of the movies he directs, but John Fusco's writing it. He's got a good career as a screenwriter. Seems like he still knows how to write. Slater is, we could say maybe his character never did die in Mexico. We don't actually see him die. It was told to us, which makes it kind of a cheat. We didn't actually see Lou Diamond Phillips die, and his real character didn't die. And then we had brushy Bill Roberts. So it's like, is it really that far-fetched for the movie to bring them all back? I don't think they're bringing back Skurlock, who we definitely saw die.
Right. Yeah, I don't think they could bring him back. But yeah, they could definitely bring the other guys back. I'd be willing to like suspend reality or whatever you want to say to believe that Lou Diamond Phillips' character's still alive and that Arkansas Dave's character's still alive. But I worry about what the story's going to be.
Fair.
But like, what's the reason you're getting these guys back together? Like, he's supposed to be dead. He's supposed to be dead. And historically, he obviously disappears.
Yes.
If he is alive, he disappears after Pat's supposed to have killed him. He does his part for a while, at least. And shows back up potentially as an old man.
It's been 30 years plus.
What would the movie be? That's why I was like, I wouldn't mind if they just do the movie about Arkansas Dave or Chavez. Yeah. And like, I mean, because it's not Billy the Kid and Billy the Kid 2. No. It's Young Guns, so I mean, I wouldn't mind them focusing on a couple of the other guys.
Have you watched any of like the Mighty Ducks or anything? Do you know how Emilio is held up as an actor? I haven't watched like the modern Mighty Ducks show he was on. I haven't.
Oh no, I've only watched the movies.
Okay, me too. So I don't know if like he was a good actor in the day. Maybe. I mean, I'm
well,
sure
he's on. He does a lot of voice stuff now, doesn't he?
I don't know.
I feel like I hear him like on all those like adult Swim stuff and. Is he a voice on Archer?
I don't know.
Like, I feel like he does a lot of voice stuff now.
Okay. It's Emilio. Yeah.
So if he was like a main character in a cartoon movie as a voice, would you cover that cartoon?
Slater?
Yeah. I mean, does that count for your Christian Slater Monitor?
Slater does a lot of voice acting. Yeah, Slater does a lot of acting in general still. I was thinking like Emilio does it. But yeah, I would count animation.
You're talking about Emilio.
I'm talking about Emilio.
Dude, everything I just said.
yeah.
I was like,
it's like Slater's in things all the time.
And I'm like going, yeah, he's in a lot of stuff. And like, I'm totally talking about Christian Slater being a voice
Slater
actor.
works all the time.
I haven't seen Emilio, but you were asking about Mighty Ducks, so I don't know, man, where my brain went, but somehow I got crossed over back to Christian Slater. I think because I was talking about Christian Slater as a voice actor.
Yes.
And I was asking you if you would do one.
Yeah. I was actually
so my brain had moved on.
Fair. Because, he does do voice stuff. I haven't seen it really, but, he definitely does. Because I've looked at his IMDb a few times to look for movies to watch.
Because I was wondering, is he the main guy in the Dragon? How to Train Your Dragon?
Oh, shoot. I haven't seen that one. I don't know. Or, I don't remember. I remember, he's in some kind of superhero animateds, DC animateds, I think. I feel like maybe How to Train Your Dragon had... I guess you're right. He is on Archer. He was on Robot Chicken. Yeah, you're way right about the voice acting shows he's been on, for sure. I do not see How to Train Your Dragon.
Okay, that's probably somebody else then.
But I do see everything else you said. Yeah. But also he and Lou Diamond Phillips have aged wonderfully. I was watching a thing, somebody has an interview with Lou Diamond Phillips where they ask him about Young Guns 3, and pretty much he knows everything we just said, that it's going to exist more or less, and he's down. But he looks fantastic. I don't know. I'm inclined to kind of trust it. If they have John Fusco writing it, I think that he'll come up with something at least watchable. I'm gonna be optimistic.
Yeah, that gives me more hope.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because it's
hearing that.
Yeah. Are you reading anything right now?
Yeah, I'm reading this series on early Native American.
Ooh.
Coming into how it's called the Lost Native Americans or something. But it's by its husband and wife. They're anthropologists and archaeologists. And it starts out 28,000 years ago as first people are coming into the Americas, and then it every book hops a couple hundred years forward.
Which one are you in right now?
I'm on the second one.
Nice.
There's
the first one
28 books or something.
Whoa, that sounds really good.
I've been enjoying that series.
I just finished some book about the artist Egon Schiele, a Tashian book. Does not sound as good as the book you're reading.
Well, the one I'm reading is more taking a break from some of the more serious books I read. I'll read more some theology and science and all that kind of stuff, that Guns and Steel or whatever book, stuff like that, the Guns, Germs, and Steel. What is that book?
What is that? I don't know. What is that one?
I thought your dad turned me on to it.
He probably did, and I just don't remember.
Well, it's about why certain continents were better to be on.
Now it's starting to ring a bell.
Yeah, because of the way they could trade and stuff could happen easier between Europe and Asia. Well, if you're in South America or Africa or something, you're cut off, kind of from the rest of the world. And so that book showed why civilization developed and why European civilization kind of had the advantage to take over the world.
Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Yeah. So I usually read a little bit more stuff like that's going to teach me something. But when I take a break, I like science fantasy stuff.
Yeah, but science fantasy, really fiction also will always teach you something if it's any good, right? You'll learn something, even if it's just vocabulary, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's why I like that you're always reading.
What I'm not reading, actually, because one of the book series I read for almost 25 years was Wheel of Time. I read Wheel of Time as it came out. And so, I've purposely not been reading recently because I didn't want to be in another series reading that.
So have you watched the show?
Yeah, I've watched the first 4 or 5 episodes now.
How does that hold up?
I'm one of those fans that I can let stuff be different because, I got Marvel, grew up on the X-Men. The writers and artists change what your characters look like and what the development of the story was. And I grew up on James Bond. They change that dude every so often. Han Solo got changed on me. Superman's symbol's been changed on me. So when I come to some series like Wheel of Time, it's maybe my favorite fantasy series ever. I'm willing to accept that they have to do stuff differently. Mm-hmm. And so I've been a fan going into it that, I'm just happy that they're making this series.
Yes,
I was super happy they made Lord of the Rings. This is my Lord of the Rings and Star Wars put together, this Wheel of Time series. So I'm just happy it's being made. But I've actually honestly been really, really enjoying it.
Oh, good. Because that was my question is I haven't read them, but I could enjoy the show if it's a good show.
I feel episode 1 and 2, I was a little but man, by the end of, I think it was the end of 4, I was all in.
Yeah. I need a show. I've been watching some shows that I'm kind of I might wait and watch him with my dad. I was watching The Americans, but he's already seen it. He's the one that was trying to get me to watch it, and I've got some left. I was like, well, maybe when I visit Oklahoma, he'll want to watch something and won't have anything he wants to watch, and so we can just watch the ones I haven't seen. But I don't know if he'll want to watch Wheel of Time or not, so I can just watch that on my own.
Right. Yeah, I don't. That doesn't strike me as something that your parents or my parents would be into.
He liked Game of Thrones.
That's like on the other end of the science fantasy spectrum.
Okay.
Like these guys were friends, kind of similar to Tolkien and Lewis, and so it would be kind of trying to compare like Narnia to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's really different.
Wheel of Time is more your Narnia. I mean, it's not like Narnia. Like there's not talking animals and stuff, but they're drastically different worlds and different, vibe and everything.
Okay. Yeah, because Game of Thrones is kind of like almost light on fantasy.
Game of Thrones, like I read the first 3 books of that before there was ever a show. And then I didn't even really watch the show that much because I had already given up on the books. Because book 4 was horrible. And I was always wondering how they even going to finish that show, which I guess they ended up like all the fans are still mad at how it was finished.
Yeah, I didn't read the books, but I liked the end of the show.
I'm like, the dude didn't even know how to finish it in the books. He hasn't finished the books yet. So of course the show's going to be horrible in its ending. He didn't even write the ending. Someone else did.
I thought the ending of the show made sense.
I think that's one of the best things about Wheel of Time is that it's finished. It's completed. We know how it ends. All the source material for the show is already there. They don't have to like develop anything new. They don't have to come up with an ending. But yeah, I feel like it's got a lot of, it's got potential to be better than Game of Thrones, like fan wise and everything, I think.
Cool.
So I have hope. I have hope for it. All right, man.
Thank you so much for joining me.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. And I'll see you like in a week.
Oh, okay. All right, man.
I love you, buddy.
Happy holidays to everybody watching.
Join us next time for another visit from our financial expert, Amit Patel. We'll look at our investments and talk about 1991's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.